Hello, and welcome to the show because you are now tuned into a new Monday Night Live. That's right, aka the Hangout stream, aka the Chill stream, all fired up and having some fun for March 27th, 2023, and brought to you by yours truly, the man broadcasting from behind the curtain. You know who I am, because if you don't know by now, you can visit www.livefreeliverich.com or simply Google this name and you can find out. How you guys doing? Did you have a week? Here's the thing. We have a fun show lined up for tonight. Let's see what we have here. Fun show lineup for tonight. The bulk of which is I'm going to be doing a deep dive analysis of one of our ongoing hot topics in an attempt to arm you guys with some info that may save you from pulling your hair out the next time an argument arises. Of course, as you can see, I take preventative measures for such occasions. I have big news to share for those of you who actively support the indie scene, as well as for underground artists of all creative mediums. That's right. Let's see. We have some cult worship Wattpad reading to do, and I'll be wrapping up the show tonight with some of your comments that you left throughout the week. And but before all that, and without further ado, I'd like to take this time and slide right into my first segment of the night, where I like to shine a spotlight on some books. That's right. That are currently available or coming soon to an online store near you. Hey, Jeff, welcome. So we have first up tonight. This comes from Daniel Dassler. She says Double Trouble, and this is her second book from her series. Says Andrea Lesson is on the wrong side of the tracks, and how she tries to get out is a wild ride. And this is her book, Coming Up Gray, Book 2, PR Book 2. How you doing, Jeff? It's a big show tonight. Okay, there is the cover. Let's check out the blurb, shall we? Get on, hold on tight, and be ready for a fight. Climb on the back of Derek Gray's 1989 Harley Softail and journey with him and Andrea as they navigate the aftermath of the events following PR. It's not an easy ride through the unfamiliar, perilous territory of balancing the pain of loss, the vulnerability of love, and the complications of growing up. Still, there's always a little thrill where there's danger, and even when the path ahead is too foggy to see around the next bend in the road, experiencing the uncertainty together makes for one hell of an adventure. Along the way, you'll see some familiar faces and get acquainted with some new, maddening, hard-to-love characters as Derek and Andrea try to make the world see that running away doesn't always mean giving up. 215 pages. 215 pages. Teen and young adult coming of age fiction. All right. Keep it moving along. Next up comes from the Gilded server. And this is actually from an author that we've had on the show before. And we were talking about his Kickstarter. This time around, we're just going to cover the book. And this is Hydra Tower by Daniel Jones. And if I'm not mistaken, his Kickstarter campaign is still live right now. I think it's probably around 10 days left on that one. And what he's doing with that is for you can get like special perks, like a signed copy of the book and extra swag. And the proceeds to that, he says, goes towards advertising for the book and getting like promo materials for conventions and book signings and stuff like that. So let's check out the book. The book itself is actually on pre-order right now. So that's what we're going to cover right now. All right. Very snazzy looking cover there. He's the creature feature author. Hydra Tower is an exciting story that follows 3 powerful heroines in an exciting swords and sorcery fantasy. Trouble plagues the kingdom of Grayson. Not only is King Edward's dealing with bandits, but he's helping distant relatives, including young Princess Lavina, escape a diphtheria outbreak. I'm not sure if I pronounced that properly. But shortly after Princess Lavina and her family arrive, a monster attacks, a fierce, acid-spitting Hydra that even magic can't defeat. As the island evacuates, King Edward's son, Prince Malcolm, becomes trapped in the castle tower, unable to escape the Hydra. His disappearance leaves Grayson vulnerable to political intrigue, and the Hydra's appearance foreshadows a powerful evil growing in the land. When the king is poisoned, it's up to Princess Lavina to gather legendary warriors to kill the Hydra, rescue the prince, and save the kingdom before it's too late. And there is a note down here. It says large print, ebook, and paperback are available. So there's actually two separate listings for this one. You can get the large print. There's a large print listing as well. 389 pages, sword and sorcery. And saving the dandy in distress. I was joking around with Daniel when I had him on about how he was subverting the old save the princess trope. All right. Next up here, from the Twitter, Stark Terror Author. He says, cheers, Jonathan. Here's mine, a splatterpunk zombie horror crime thriller with a slice of satire. A little bit of a dark-ish mixed bag with this one. With a hot dose of hell by Mr. Steve Stark. There it is, a hot dose of hell. There's the cover. Let's check out the blurb on this one. A deadly new drug has hit the streets of Scarmouth, or Scarmouth. We'll say Scarmouth. I'm from Maine. A deadly new drug has hit the streets of Scarmouth, one which turns users into bloodthirsty maniacs with superhuman tolerance for pain. Through insidious design, a large quantity has fallen into the hands of squatters occupying the derelict Victoria Hotel. It's a bad place for a group of woke, virtue-signaling social media influencers to promote their new homeless charity, but they've got a PR story in the making. One of their party is searching for a long-lost sister, and if they can find her, they believe the stunt could bring them international attention. They're not the only ones looking for something. Hired Muscle, Fred, and Pinky have been tasked to recover that lost drug shipment. These men know what it's doing to people. What they don't know is just how many have been affected already. But within the bowels of that derelict hotel breeds a mindless, homicidal legion. Scarmouth is known as the coastal town they forgot to burn down. It'll only take a few hot doses to finally set it alight. That sounds like a fun one. I have to go ahead and add that one to the old TBR list. 260 pages of crime thrillers, horror literature. Of course, these are all books that are suggested to me directly by the publishers themselves, whether they are self-published authors or they come from independent labels or small press companies. Hello, Reina-chan. It says, how do you subvert the saving princess trope? You go and assassinate the princess? Well, no, see, it's the heroines. There's the, the female warriors have to save the prince. The prince gets the dandy. I'm assuming he's a dandy. He can't be much of a fighter class. That's what I'm assuming. Too much soy in the diet. All right. Moving right along. This last one up here tonight comes from Rowena Redman. And she writes, a fantasy land of 9 kingdoms living together peacefully for over 600 years. What difference could one survivor make? Read this first installment of The Kingdoms of Parvi. It's The Kingdoms of Parvi, The Survivor. All right. A village with seemingly no enemies is reduced to a ghost town with no warning after all the inhabitants are killed, bar one. Mere Beth, the daughter of a murdered family, seeks answers whilst she contemplates her future as the adopted daughter of King Trevard. She knows there can be no hope of future with Prince Frederick, the king's son, but she cannot help loving him. The king himself has never been satisfied with answers on the attack. The king himself has never been satisfied with answers on the attack and must now strike out on his own in search of a culprit. However, with the return of the Black Knights, he might discover more than he had wished to. As events unfold, Mercy, a member of the Black Knights, present at that long ago massacre, ponders on but one thought as he weighs up whether he truly belongs with them. Oh, I like that, actually. Kind of introduce a bad guy. It's like we have the introduction of a bad guy here, or villain, that kind of questions their own motivations. Are we the baddies? 289 pages of epic fantasy and futuristic romance. She saves herself. Yeah. Well, those are the books, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the books for this week. Let's see what we have here. And that's D.A. Bell writes. Welcome, D.A. Bell. So those are the books for this week. If you guys are watching this on the replay, I'll probably already have it over there. You know the deal. You can head over to the community tab. And what you can do is you can vote. The poll will most likely be up, but I'll put up the poll and you can vote for which one out of those 4 books you thought had the most text appeal. That's right. So in other words, which one out of those 4 books would you be most likely to pick up? And if you would like to discover more from the independent market, you can head on over to my shorts tab or my playlist tab. And you can open yourself up some mystery packs. Inside each mystery pack, there is one cover card that reveals a book that has been recognized by the Live Free, Live Rich network. And it also includes a link to an editorial written on that book by yours truly. You'd want the assassination story? Rainer's out for blood. All right. We're going to switch things up a little bit tonight, and I'm going to jump right into some announcements, and for good reason. So let's get into some announcements. This is breaking news. We have some announcements to make. So the Iron Age Media is an independent label that showcases a variety of underground artists, from literature to comic books to illustrators, graphic designers, as well as creators in music, film, and gaming. And tonight, we'll be checking out an exciting new way the Iron Age Media plans to champion these independent artists with the launch of Anvil, Iron Age magazine. And here with me tonight, I have the man behind the brand, none other than Richard of Iron Age Media. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
I think you're still on mute.
Am I still on mute? Uh-oh. That's not good.
I need this. Hello.
Hello. So I'm not muted?
No.
Okay, good. Perfect. That's good, because I was gonna be like, oh dear.
So welcome. This is big. This is big stuff for you. You all fired up or what?
Yeah, I'm very fired up. I'm a little bit tired, as I mentioned earlier, but I'm very excited. Long day for Richard. Yeah, I was gonna say I've been a little bit anxious about this thing going well, so I'm just happy that everything's gone like way better than I expected. So I thought there was a real demand for this, and I really thought that people would be interested. But I'm very happy to see that was actually correct, because you just never know until you do it.
For good reason. Before I say too much, I don't want to get ahead of myself. What I want to do is I want to go ahead. I want to give you a chance to just say a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the brand Iron Age Media and what this brand means to you.
All right. Well, to be honest with you, it started out, just as a website. It was kind of a thing that I started on a whim. So the goal from the very beginning has been to help independent creators and decentralized creators build their own networks, right? So it's been brand wise, I've tried to be very welcoming to everybody. I've been very explicit about not trying to, lay claim to the name Iron Age or anything like that. And, I think that's been very important, because I think people would have immediately been turned off by that. And it's also just not true. I was talking to Razorfist the previous week, and he said the same thing, which is that it doesn't really matter what we do here. The Iron Age is just a term recognizing what is already happening, which is that there is a movement away from the kind of corporate canned culture that just frankly sucks, and a resurgence of people wanting new good stuff, whatever that stuff is exactly. They don't quite know yet, but they're looking for something better. And so we're just trying to connect creators who are already doing those things with this new wave of consumers that's going to be increasingly approaching.
So for you, is it kind of like the aim of the brand aside, like what does that mean for you? Is it like a sense of camaraderie thing?
So for me, it's about affecting culture, right? I'm not happy with the way that culture is right now. So it's a way for me to build something better and have a positive aspiration for everybody to get together. Everybody has differences. It's more a kind of a unity, but also sort of a funny enough, kind of a rebellious streak to it. You know what I mean? We're all a little bit rebellious, or else we wouldn't be here. But we do have more in common than we have different. And so I think that's been a big factor for how I've been, trying to make my decisions on what I choose to highlight and how, what direction I take things.
So is it like so it's kind of like, so say like you're not personally, you just don't like what's coming out in the mainstream, which a lot of people share that same.
I'm bored of it. I mean, it's not even that it's beyond dislike. I've moved past that. I just don't even think about it.
Just bored.
Yeah, it's just like
literally no interest.
Yeah, it's stopped existing to me to a certain degree. And I mean, good Lord, I don't know when the last Marvel movie I saw, for example, or anything. You know what I mean? Like, just there's very little. I mean, there's occasionally some stuff that comes out that I guess is worthwhile, but I just don't engage with it. So I wanted something, and these people were doing stuff that I wanted to see, and it's very hard as a creator, whether it be an author or artist or whatever, to really network, especially these days. Even with social media, people think that because social media exists, it's much easier to market yourself, and that's not really the case. It's kind of like you can, but you also have to dedicate a huge amount of energy to it, and that's not really well suited to a lot of creators. So I'm just trying to help people out, basically.
It's almost like it's almost like petitioning. Well, in a way, I guess, on the consumer, because I look at it in two ways. It's like on the consumer side, it's like, hey guys, it's like you're kind of stepping up. You're stepping up, and you're saying, I this stuff isn't for me anymore. This mainstream stuff, it's not for me anymore. It's boring. I want to create something new, and you're stepping up. You're kind of taking initiative, and it's almost like you're almost like, I don't want to use terms like tossing up a flag or something like that, or putting up a banner. It's more like, well, in a way, it kind of is like a banner when you're branding, but it's like saying, hey, who else is tired of this? And let's kind of like create our own kind of not like a group, in a way that it's just like, do you just agree that you're tired of mainstream stuff? You just want to see something different. Are you ready to see something different?
Yeah, and people don't even know exactly what. I mean, this is true of everything. People don't really know exactly what they want until they see it. So it's one of these things where if you ask somebody to design a horse, you'd get a camel, right? I'm not sure if you ever heard that, but and it's like there's this thing that nobody actually really prefers. And so I think that you need to what I'm trying to do is just show people what's out there, because there's a lot of diamonds in the rough, which, not to say anything is particularly rough necessarily, but it is rough out there. You know what I mean? And so it's hard to even know if it's a diamond or not until you pick it up and look at it. And so, initially Iron Age Media was supposed to be a link aggregator. I wasn't even going to write articles. I was just going to find other websites that wrote articles, scrape them into Iron Age Media, and be like, oh, hey, look, it wasn't even about highlighting creators. It was about highlighting other websites that were highlighting creators. And then I kind of realized that there's not really, I mean, there are websites that will talk about creators from time to time, but they also fall into the typical routine of talking about old media, essentially. And so it's like you'll see them put up an article, and you can't even really blame them, because they put up an article about some fun new book about Hydras and or what was it, the oh my goodness, the terror book, no, the Innsmouth book. My brain just completely clicked out of gear. I'm sorry, I'm very tired. Any of the books that we discussed, but or that you discussed earlier, it's one of these things where they put up an article about those, and people are like, and 20 people read it. You know what I mean? Or 200 or 2,000 people read it. And then they put up another article about Velma, about how much Velma sucks, and 20,000 people read it. You know what I mean? And so it's very easy for all these other places. I mean, it's rational for them to do that instead. And even if they highlight independent creators, they tend to get drowned out. So that's kind of why I pivoted with Iron Age Media.
And I think that's a good choice. And I also think that that's probably a good segue where we can kind of get into we can introduce your project here, which is just launched on Indiegogo today.
Yep.
And this is your Anvil Iron Age magazine. So let's bring that up and talk about this. Anything you want to say to kind of introduce it, like why you decided to go the magazine route? Is it the consistency?
So one of the things there's a number of reasons I decided to go with the magazine. One is that I think that while digital obviously scales extremely well and you can do anything and everything, you first have to kind of get some eyes and do like your basic. I don't know. You have to build something before you can just say, all right, I'm just going to go digital and bring people in. I'm going to do something else. So I wanted to do something physical media because that's a little bit more premium and people like to have physical stuff. And a magazine because, yeah, I wanted to emphasize consistency and I wanted to do something that would be kind of like a lower buy-in. You know what I mean? Like, there's never going to be. Well, I don't. Maybe someday, if things go really well, there'll be like a hardback compendium of like issues or something. You know, but there's never going to be like a hardback option for issue number one. Like even the way I structured this thing, it's like, do you want more? Well, here's some goodies, but mostly, just buy another copy, and give it away. And because I want it to be little pieces of other people's stuff. And you go, oh, this is neat. And I mean, worst case scenario, you read 1 out of 7 stories. You're like, I didn't really vibe with that. And it's like, oh, well, it was still good, but it just didn't it didn't strike me. I'm not going to go out and seek out that author or that illustrator now. And you still got 6 other stories and you're like probably going to resonate with one of those. In fact,
it's also going to be articles, right? Like interviews.
It's going to have a few articles. Really, it's primarily going to be content, and it's going to be mostly illustrated stories. So there is going to be a 10-page comic preview.
Let's get into it. Let me bring up the screen here.
Let's just take a look there.
All right, so this is the campaign right now. I'll let you guys check out the trailer on your own time. I want to hop right into it.
Yeah, you should check that out. This is
exciting news. So Anvil Iron Age magazine issue 1. Look at this, almost 200% of your initial goal, and this is within the first 24 hours. So clearly, what this says. It's not just the dollar amount here, but I'm looking at 104 backers for this thing.
Yes. Yep.
That's a big deal, especially for someone we were talking about with your brand. This is a fairly new brand.
Yep.
How long have you been doing this so far?
Let's see here. I launched the website in August. So it's really been kind of a mid to late August. So coming up on 9 months now. And the magazine wasn't even like really a glimmer in my eye until late January. So February was when I accepted the submissions for the short stories. And, I was also looking for comics, but, that it didn't quite, I don't know. Nobody really was super excited about the pay that I was offering for the comics, and understandably, because I didn't really have a readership. And so I think that the comics were a little bit more wary, and I understand that initially because there's a lot more like time that goes into a single page of a comic versus a single page of a short story, and that's just the way it is. So, obviously this is all coming out of my own pocket, and I just couldn't like really justify some of the expenses, but I was able to work out something with Razor Fist and George Alexopoulos at the last second, and it was perfect, man. It's just like the stars aligned, basically. So
That's awesome. That you're in the support is a big deal, and I think that since the type of brand that you're building up here, where you're trying to offer, it's more of a service brand. If I'm not, to be too assumptive as far as that goes, like it's definitely like you're trying to provide a service for the indie scene.
Well, I'm trying to do both. You know what I mean? I'm kind of want to be like a guide stone, both for uh, creators and consumers. You know what I mean? It's like, here's an entry point,
Yep.
and this is something that Ethan Van Sciver talked about on Timcast back on Friday. He said that Comicsgate is kind of like part of the Iron Age, and that the Iron Age is sort of is like this up like welling up of multiple movements, right? And it's not really as limited. And I was so happy to hear him say that. You know what I mean? Because that is exactly how I feel about it. It's not. It's basically independent creators
There's
doing
there's subcultures like within
exactly, and I think that
like
there
the
should be
underground.
subcultures. I think that there should be. I'm not like advocating that everybody, put down their hatchets and sing kumbaya with everybody else all the time. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that we do have some common ground, and this is like kind of like a meeting point. So it's a point for creators to come and find customers, hopefully, and also for customers to come and find things that they don't even know they want yet, but that they're going to be super excited about.
And that takes work. That's what I was going to say, and that's what I mean by the like almost like a service type of deal, because it's like almost acting as like a filter when you say, okay, trying to find the diamonds in the rough. I know this, the indie scene, it can be hard in terms of not just discoverability, but on the artist side, but for consumers, because they're like, they don't want to go, the average consumer is not going to want to go digging around, like trying to, find something. So if they have mediums, they have ways, to discover work, like trusted names within the scene that they can go, oh, okay, I can go over there and I trust that brand to be able to present me with artists that are creating quality work, that have a certain degree of integrity, if you will. So it's almost like a quality control type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to I don't know. To a certain degree, I agree. You are correct. It is somewhat of what I'm doing, but I also think, like for example, Kursova, they take their fiction very seriously. You know what I mean? And they have built up a brand of being like a very high quality level of fiction that if you're a Kursova author, like you can use that to actually sell books that aren't even published by Kursova. Thank you, TJ. But so there's plenty of entry points. You know what I mean? And I think that I don't know. I obviously picked the best submissions I could for the magazine.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's also not to say that like, oh well, if you didn't make it in Iron Age Media, you're not. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't want to be like that guy who is putting anybody else down.
But there's
a quality assurance, I would say, with Anvil for sure.
Yeah, there's going to be like a standard that's going to be, you're going to, want to have a certain standard set for your product, and as in terms of a certain barrier to entry. In other words, it's not just, any Tom, Dick, or Harry can just, throw in some half-hearted fluff and that, and that be good enough.
But I mean, honestly, we do have space for that too, though, with the prompt submissions, the weekly prompt submissions on Iron Age Media. We, if you write something and you send it to me, I'll put it up. You know what I mean? And people will probably read it. They'll at least give it a passing skim. And there's been some submissions that I've because I've read. Well, I haven't read any of the March submissions because things have been crazy getting this magazine out. But there, just to be frank, there have been some submissions that I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna voting for this, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip to the chase, read the ending and call it good. You know what I mean? Because but everybody's learning, and it's another thing I really like about the community that's forming up around the Iron Age, at least around the Iron Age Media prompt submissions, is that a lot of people are going out there and they're proofreading for each other, and there's, like my editor for Anvil, Daniel P. Riley, he's started offering short story editing services. So I mean, he's probably, I don't know, you're probably not going to pay. I think it was like $50 to get feedback on an Iron Age Media free prompt. You know what I mean? But if you are going to be submitting something to to Anvil or Kursova or Story Hack Mag or Biz Archives or any of these other really great publications that are already out there, that's there, and that's not something that's common. So you have a lot of people out there trying to help each other out. So
certainly, let's get into some of this. Let's go over the campaign here. We have so the magazine already reached your goal, but let's see some of the perks here. So you have all the different tiers. The lowest perk here for people entry is $25, and that will get them 2 copies, right? A digital copy and a physical copy of the magazine.
Yeah. Basically, now, everybody's going to be getting a digital copy, but it's going to ship out 2 weeks or it's going to email out 2 weeks after fulfillment begins.
Now, one thing I noticed is it's actually dated for the summer this year. So you're pretty much
I mean, it's not done
to be determined, or
well, okay. It also, some of the problem here is how well it does, because if it does super well, there may actually be like some concerns as far as I need to wait for funds to fully unlock before I can go pay the printer. You know what I mean? Because like I definitely want to make sure that I'm not in a situation where I have to foot the bill for myself if it's a really large sum of money, Okay. And at this point in time, it's pretty much already to that point. So, I'm going to take it to print in May. We should have 100% content complete by the end of April. And that's all art, all everything. We already have all of the short stories and the RPG done. We have probably, I would say, about 40% of the illustrations, which 5 of the 7 stories have at least 2 to 3 illustrations per. One of them is very, very very short relative to the others, and it only has 2 illustrations. But all the others have multiple. So, most of that art is about halfway done, and then the comic is still in progress. So,
okay.
But I feel very confident that
so that it will be a release. Yeah, so you're saying pretty confident that it's going to be definitely a 2023 release. So what I was going to ask.
Oh, absolutely. There's no chance that it will not ship out not no chance. Like, we're talking World War III type stuff. But anyway, no rational chance that it will not be out by July 31st.
Oh, great, great. So here's the thing. Now, what I wanted to ask, so this is a magazine. You're doing a limited run on this magazine, or is it going to go in demand after the fact?
It'll be in demand after the end of the campaign until I print, and then whenever it prints, I'm going to have to decide, right, whether I'm going to accept like a second issuance or not. If they are, I'm definitely going to have like some kind of a second run. You know what I mean? And clearly market so that the people in the campaign, it's like this is the first printing of this, so that'll probably be something that appears on the back cover, just because right now the back cover is kind of it's a white space for us. We kind of left it, I put together the cover and was like, well, we'll figure out what to do with the back cover later. We've already got the interior ad space sold, so that's good. And it's really I think it's going to be fantastic. I'm excited about it.
All right. Well, speaking of covers, we do have the front cover here, and let's see. Rainer was asking whose work are included here. So let's just go over that.
We can scroll down and check that out. If you want to jump ahead, you can. Otherwise, we'll see it in just a few minutes. But you can see the author names there. So
let's check out this cover for a second. Bask in this glory. So you have see, that's where I saw that summer 2023. So this is what I have to say that's impressive to me is any project where you have more than one human being involved in it can become a shit show quick, fast, and in a hurry. So
Yeah.
I am quite impressed that you're able to organize, you know what I mean, this deal. But you do say that you have kind of a team of people that you're working with.
Yeah. In real life, I'm a project engineer. So, that's something that I do regularly. And right now, my editor, Daniel P. Riley, has been, he basically helped me kind of, I don't know, together we worked down the stories. And then he worked with the authors to get everything done because I paid to have it all edited to make sure it was all, ship shape. And so he's been working with them, and then Jacob Kalta from 365 Infantry, he's been doing. He did the video, for example, not the music, but he put everything together, and he's doing the interior layouts. So his job is still underway. Oh, hey there, Whimsyland. You got Daniel P. Riley in the chat there. It's Whimsyland. There you go.
Hello. Welcome.
Oh, yeah. And there's JVP Music. He wrote the fantastic track for that trailer.
That's his music?
Yeah. He's great.
All right. So maybe we should give it a watch then.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
All right. Let's do it. Let me know if the audio. Did you get the audio?
No, I did not. Did everybody else?
All right, hold on. I think I shared it without audio.
That's probably wise. In most cases. Yeah, man, today has been awesome. I was going to say JVP in there.
Badass.
Agreed.
That's cool. All right. So this is what I'm gathering so far. What we have here, basically, this is so Iron Age. So Anvil Iron Age magazine is basically providing opportunities for indie artists to be discovered by those who are actively, that keyword, actively supporting the culture. That's what I'm getting so far out of this.
Yeah, I mean, and also get paid. Like I the only thing that I'm like really not paying for, aside from at least not directly, is the comic. And that was because Razor and George were not, they were like, well, we'll just work it out basically. So I kind of have a per issue rate that I'm planning on paying them, whether or not they really want me to. You know what I mean? But I'm very adamant about paying for everything that went into the magazine, which isn't to say that I paid as much as I would like to, but it's not something that we've done on a totally shoestring budget either. Because I think that sometimes, that can be very difficult for indies, just trying to make a living and everything else. So,
well, so one thing that I notice here, so we won't go through all the stretch goals, but this one that I noticed right here, which seems like we're creeping up on that one, is
Yes, sir.
the $5,000 stretch goal. Says issue number 1 will have covered enough of the expenses that I will be able to immediately look at firing up issue number 2. So that was what my question was going to be for you, was if you had a set amount of issues that you wanted to do, or if this was just some kind of like almost like a pilot run, or it's going to be something that's kind of indefinite into the future.
This is we're certainly not going to be doing Indiegogo forever. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to be having a pre-order campaign and yada yada. Although maybe there'll always be a pre-order campaign for like bonus goodies, whether it be posters or shirts or other stuff. But long term, I want to be a subscription magazine, right? So issue number 2 is, tentatively should theoretically ship no later than October 31st, right? So 3 months after the first issue. So I really didn't expect to hit this until April. So I've been telling everybody I'll talk to them in April if they're interested in being part of issue number 2. So maybe I'll just have to kind of put like a polite fig leaf and say immediately in a week. You know what I mean? But I'm already really thinking about, where I could, how I could get the next one rolling. And I have a really good idea. I've learned, like, there are a lot of things I could have done differently this past, 60 days or so that would have made my life easier and made the lives of my team a little bit easier as well, So I fully expect issue number 2 to go smoothly and maybe even, I don't know. It depends on readership and whether or not I choose to do ads and things like that. It might be able to, ship a little bit more cheaply or something like that. So,
hey, with over 100 backers on your first issue, on your launch, I mean, that's that's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. Oh, I'm overjoyed. You know what I mean? I'm like,
it's a big deal.
I'm very, very happy. I'm loving it. I love all the content in there. And that's another thing is like, okay, go back to the prompt submissions for Iron Age Media. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, thank you for posting this. I'm like, well, thank you for writing it. You know what I mean? It's like fun to read these things. I enjoy short fiction. And a lot of what people write is pretty awesome. Thank you, Unreal.
And that's, I'll be honest with you personally. I've kind of been like, if people have seen the stream, this is something that I've been talking about, as like keeping an eye out for more opportunities out there. As an indie, it's like you don't want to. It can be, you can end up suffering from burnout quick, fast, in a hurry, from juggling, all the different, wearing all the different hats. You got to be your own marketer, your own advertiser, your this, that.
Well, I can't. Yeah, listen, I'm tired. And I didn't actually write anything. You know what I mean? I didn't draw anything. I did the layout for the cover, right? But like, in terms of the actual artistic and literary endeavor that is Anvil, I've done very little. You know what I mean? I'm just an organizer and the money man for the moment, So it's one of these things where I can't even, like, it blows my mind that people are like, I'm going to write a whole book and then I'm going to like market it myself and I'm going to do everything myself. You know what I mean? Like, power to you. I think you can do it. It's just, my God, I'm tired just from this. That's like a year of sustained effort on your part. And so, I like even more respect to all the indies out there who are like rocking it by themselves, And so, but at the same time, but at the same time, if there's no reason that has to be the only way and that it has to be as difficult as it currently is, So one of my goals with Anvil and I can say this now that it's been successful, with issue number 1, is that, I want to have a regular submission guidelines. I'm not going to do like open submissions year round. I'm going to do rolling submissions just to kind of like, I don't know, give people some guidelines. You know what I mean? Because if it's like, oh, open submission, send it whatever, then you may never actually send it. You know what I mean? Or you send it and I'm not actually really looking that hard. You get at the bottom of a list. So there'll be rolling submissions, and if you want to try your hand at writing short fiction and you want to try and build an audience, I'd love for Anvil to be a good way to, at least make a couple dinners.
Look at guys like Lovecraft and stuff. They writing short fiction for like Weird Tales and
yep, exactly. Exactly.
That's basically how I kind of see this. Is it's kind of like
Weird Tales was definitely an inspiration. So yeah, I played around with that, and old pulp magazines were not they were illustrated, at least partially, So that was part of my decision, because originally I was going to have short stories, which was just going to be mostly text. And then it was going to be comics. I was going to try and have, maybe 1 or 2 comics. And, fortunately we ended up having a comic anyway. But whenever I got to the end of the month, the end of the submission window, and there wasn't really anything that I was like super, that I felt like fit within the Anvil kind of, sense of how I wanted to do things, then I was like, well, I'm just going to take that money and put it into illustrations and for all the short stories. And since then I've been feeling more and more excited about it. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to put a little bit more money into illustrations, a little bit more. And so I think that each one of these stories is going to have, of the original stories, because there are 2 stories that actually we selected from the prompt submissions. So they're previously published.
It looks like you have something. You get a little
we have blurbs
description of some here. Of what people are actually going to get out of or see inside the magazine here. So we have Ghost of the Badlands, and now this is the Razor Fist? Catch an early glimpse of Razor Fist and George. How do you pronounce that?
Alexopolis's
upcoming Hellfire and Brimstone Western comic. So is this one is going to be a black and white?
I believe so. I mean, it is a. I don't know if you've seen his work in other things.
I have not.
I mean, he's a fantastic illustrator.
It looks good.
Yeah, he's a great motion, very living stuff. I just love his stuff. So I'm super excited to have him in the magazine.
So without going through the blurb on each and every single one of these, can you kind of give a snapshot of the type of genres that are included in this first edition here of the magazine?
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we, just that I don't have to like strain my brain too much, let's scroll back up and I'll go through them. So Fleet of Theseus is kind of a I think I described it as kind of like a thinky sci-fi mystery to a certain degree. There's definitely some action and whatnot. It's great. Codename Ghost is like it hits the ground running. It's our shortest of the originals. In fact, I think it's our shortest story in the whole magazine. And it's kind of like your cyberpunk, very short action story. Brigands of the Moors, and that's actually only going to be part 1. That is I'm not sure how I would describe it. It's a fantasy story about basically some justice being brought to some wrongdoers.
So we have some fantasy, we have some sci-fi.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Are you open? Are there any genres that you're now? Is this going to be genre focused type of brand here?
Well, let's put it this way. Well, before we do that, I'm going to do the other 2 before I forget what I'm doing here. The Affair of the Unquiet Grave is a sort of Sherlock Holmesian paranormal mystery. It's fun. I really enjoyed this one, and we've got a very talented artist also working on that, who's going to be producing some great work for that. Everybody's fantastic, but I'm really looking forward to what comes out of this. Thief of Perun, which is sort of your classic sword and sandal short fiction that follows a young man who seeks out somebody that he wants revenge upon. The Archive of Bliss, that actually was originally published for one of the Iron Age media prompts, and that's a fun kind of psychedelic sci-fi. And then Chroniclers of the March of the Trees, that is, I would say it's like whimsical fantasy, since that is Daniel P. Riley whimsical. But I was a big fan of the Chroniclers, and so I was like, yeah, go ahead and stick that in there. That
you have anything to say about that, Daniel? I know he's still in the chat.
He's probably lurking. He's probably going to say something like about not wanting to shill for himself or something like that. But it's fun. I enjoyed it. And,
so quite a bit of content, I have to say, for the first round. Do you have any idea roughly how many pages this magazine?
So it's going to be a very solid. It's definitely going to be 100 pages. It may be 120 pages. It may be closer to 130. So it's going to be a beefy volume. You know what I mean? So, there's a lot there, and like I said, illustrations. It's good stuff. And also I need to mention it, but the solo RPG, which is kind of like a choose your own adventure mixed with a little bit of dice rolling. It was not something I asked for, but when the author approached me about it and was like, "Hey, would you like for me to do this?" I was like, "Yeah, do that." They're like, "Or would you rather me write a short story?" And I was like, "Nah, don't worry about the short story. I got a lot of those. Write this strange little thing that you just pitched to me." And I think he might have regretted that, because it took him a lot of time getting all the working pieces together. But it was it's a fun little thing. It's kind of weird and different. And I was like, you know what? This is going to be like my. Do you like it? Like I think it's fun, but it's kind of like a random non sequitur addition to the magazine there.
Yeah, so just kind of showcase a little bit of variety and say, hey, it's not just about stories, not just about comics, but just a little extra something to say, hey guys, if you're into
I want to get everything.
Gaming.
Yep. And I love tabletop gaming. I've interviewed a guy who does a lot of tabletop gaming as a designer.
I know you're
back in January. Mechs. Say what now?
Yeah, I know you're into the mechs.
Oh yeah, and also mechs. Yeah, I do that as well.
My battle mech.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't ever shouted that, but I really should. But it's one of these things where there's people all over the place. Like media as a whole is starting to just like rot, and people are looking for something new and something just that they can actually be part of and have fun. Yeah, exactly, and have fun. And I actually think it's very good that we look back to, we're going to be talking a little bit about this on Friday on A Drink with Crazy. But Daniel, one of his points about the Iron Age is that, we need to kind of go back and get those things that were from the past that were so much better. Like what actually made the Golden Age, let's look at those things. And while, I'm certainly not going to say that we can just turn back the clock and repeat, we can put lightning back in the bottle and do it all over again. You need to understand what's happening, And
almost like paying homage to
you got
the Golden Age, if you will.
Yeah, you got to look at what worked, and you got to learn, and you got to think about what you're doing. But if one of my things is that it's quality over ideology. I really think that I'm not going to be yes, let us hope so. And so, I think that, as far as filters go and things like that, one thing that I always try to do is I have been fairly insistent on making sure that I feel like whoever I'm promoting, they're focused on producing something of quality. You know what I mean? Like they might be a political person, they might have opinions or whatever, but this piece of content, like Razorfist example, he's very political, obviously, but the Night Vale series is not, and he's you can tell just by talking to him, he's not thinking about politics whenever he's writing Night Vale. He's excited about Night Vale and what he's doing with that. He's trying to make it the best he possibly can, and that's the kind of attitude that I really get behind and I want to find and bring out.
So for you, it's not the politics as much as it's
No.
just the culture and creating and offering an alternative.
No, because I'm sure that, like, I'm probably sure if we got everybody in chat in this room, we probably couldn't find two people that agreed on every single policy point of something. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, it's kind of like, it's just, I don't know, it's so tedious. You know what I mean? Like, you have your politics, go and vote for them. You know what I mean? But
well, I'm excited to see, what happens with Iron Age Media as things continue to develop. I mean, it's a big project. I congratulate you on your success, and I wish you all the best, man.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think I normally, before I let a guest go, I would ask if you have like an indie book or author, but seeing as how that's all you do is showcase.
Yeah, check out the whole
authors.
website.
Just I urge people to just go ahead and visit ironage.media, right?
Yes, sir.
ironage.media. All right.
Yep.
Well, Richard, thank you for coming on, man, and giving me some of your time and talking about this project.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. All right. Good deal. And thank you guys in the chat, man. You guys showing up, showing out, and showing your support, man. That means a lot. All right, so we're going to get into some more here. Let's see what we got going on in the chat. Yes, yes, very good, very good. I know Richard is probably anxious to hit the hay. Okay. Just a few more things to get to here. So we have the easiest way to get your stuff, whether you guys, I'm always on lookout for more things to mention during the stream. And I want to talk about these projects. I want to talk about you guys' books. And I want to help out. The easiest way to get whatever it is that you're working on mentioned during a future broadcast is to go ahead and join either the Gilded server or the Discord server. The choice is yours. You can join both if you want. Now, these servers here, I kind of created these servers as basically just a resource or a tool for you guys. It's a direct line of connection between you and I. So what I would eventually like to do is not do so much with the social media in terms of having to like reach out to people on social media, and I can just log on to either the Gilded or the Discord, and I can just see what it is that you guys are sharing in terms of books. I got all the channels already set up. So whether it be books, videos, your blog posts, which could be essays, poetry, what have you. We're going to get into it with reading time tonight. You can share all that stuff on there. You don't have to check in with me daily. You don't have to tell me what's going on in your personal life or anything like that. If you literally just want to use this as a resource, then you can do so. Just log in, share your links, and then that way I can log in there and I can see who's sharing what, and then I can, because I like to plan these shows ahead of time. So that's that. And last week I had a part. I played a role in the latest Doorway to Nightmare. Doorway to Nightmare is an audio drama web series. Think of it as kind of like old-timey radio or like an audio play type of deal. So it's not like audio books. It's more like an audio play. So it's audio drama, but this is a mystery thriller genre. So I play a part in the episode Stay of Execution. And these episodes premiere on Fridays at 7 p.m. on Doorway to Nightmare YouTube channel. And usually we hop in there. And the episodes are about a half hour long. You see, it's about 20 minutes, half hour long. And then we're in the live chat and while the episode's playing. And we all just kind of hang out. And this is created by Winslow Swan and Crimson Mackenzie. We talk about them quite a bit on this channel. Very proud of their work over there. Very passionate about it. And it's something different. And then some big news on the Live Free Liverage Network side. We have a new member of the Storytellers Society has checked into room 37. That's right. You can head on over. This is a project that I launched early in 2022. So this is kind of like an outreach project for aspiring writers who have yet to have any of their work published, or it could be for published authors who are kind of just looking to expand their creative portfolio. And it's also an opportunity for me that I've created like for my peers in the writing community, if you will, and we can kind of start to develop a peer-to-peer, business-to-business relationship, if you will, through collaboration. So Storyteller Society. So this is what I'm looking for is flash fiction. Okay. So flash fiction for this project. This is fiction that's like between 500 to 2,000 words for this project. And it could be any genre. I actually have a drop-down menu on this submission form. So you can choose anything from like literary, it could be horror, sci-fi, what have you. Basically all the mainstay genres. And if approved, then you will effectively book yourself a room at the Hotel Del SS, where all the members of the Storyteller Society stay, where your published work will be free for public viewing from now into the future, indefinitely. And this is something that I continue to market on a week-to-week basis. And I guess one other thing is just make sure that you own the copyright to the work and you have the right to grant me permission to publish the work. And it can be something that is republished. So it's a non-exclusive deal. No contracts involved. It's just you just agree to the terms of service. And it's non-exclusive. All right. And last item here is the Live Free, Live Rich weekly periodical. This is my newsletter that I put out once a week on Saturdays. I usually send them out. And this is just if you guys don't do social media, you're not on any of the servers or anything like that, you want to kind of keep tabs with what's going on, any kind of news surrounding the brand, you can just head on over to livefreeliverich.com right on the home page, and you subscribe for free, and you will get the weekly newsletter. All right, let's move right into reading time. Reading time, like I was saying before, this can be poetry, this can be flash fiction, essays. If you write editorials, reviewing books, even if it's like traditionally published works, but you're writing an editorial and coming at it from some sort of angle, like an analysis or like a talking point or something like that, I will read that live on the air. And just to let you guys know that you guys have my permission. If any of your work has ever been featured on any of these shows, you have my permission to download any of these live streams, and you can edit them however you want. You can do clips or anything like that, and you can use that for your own marketing and advertising purposes. Okay, so from Twitter, we have here from Maddie Nemi, the first love, a cult worshiping the mad rooster, Scottish terrorists, secret agents, and weird things lurking in the shadows. What is there not to love? Says a little quote here: the dystopian world is well thought out, well written, and looking forward to reading more. So I believe this is a Wattpad serialized here. Entitled The Force of Terror. So let's kick back, sit back, relax, and let's have a little reading time, shall we? All right. Force of Terror. 800 reads, huh? 300 votes. Let's see. The first love and the cult worshiping the mad rooster. That's what Emily finds when her mother decides to play the secret agent. As if the life as the daughter of the leader of the Scottish rebellion wasn't chaotic enough to begin with. But living through tough times makes you stronger, especially if an ancient power hides deep within your soul, waiting for you to wake up. The cult of the Mad Rooster hadn't chosen her and her family at random. Will Emily grow strong enough to fight back before the cult gains total control over her life? All right, let's see what we have here. Bad girl. Bad girl, conspiracy, cults, dystopian, London, love, magical realism. All right. Let's check out the new home. Are you a quitter? I remember how I woke up to those words on the first Saturday morning at Legion's Court. I was 13 and sleeping in the same double bed with my mother because it was the only bed we had. Rebecca Del Silva, her new boss, was screaming at her on the phone. I can still hear Rebecca's crackling voice whenever I wake up in a new and frightening place. That's probably why I started thinking about it now. You can't be serious. Is that what you are calling me on a Saturday morning for? And could you please stop screaming? Emily is sleeping. I don't want to wake her up. That was so mother bellowing next to me that she needs to keep quiet. Thinking of it still fills my heart with warmth. The 3 years I spent living just with her in the collapsing Legion's Court were truly the happiest years of my life. Oh, you want my personal development plan on your desk by Monday morning, and you want it first thing, do you? That's just too bad. My computer got confiscated yesterday, and don't you dare to really me. This is why everybody quits on your people. If you say quitter attitude one more time, I'm going to scream so loudly your head is going to explode. She didn't want to wake up her daughter. Mother turned to look at me and I pretended to be sleeping. It wasn't really my fault that the shouting had woken me up, but that would mean nothing to her. The only thing she would see was me disobeying her wishes, and I had too much on my mind to have any energy left to fight with her. The butcher. That's what they call her nowadays. If you ask the wrong people, that is, the people who are spreading lies about me, too. Miss Rebecca Del Silva, are you going to regret the day you were... Oh, it's me threatening you now, is it? Still screaming at Rebecca over the phone, Mother walked out of our bedroom and into the kitchen. Not that it made much difference in our tiny flat. The walls of the estate were made out of rice paper. I could easily hear when one of our neighbors pulled toilet paper out of the roll. Speaking of neighbors, Mrs. Gray Owl, who lived upstairs, was now awake as well. I could hear her knocking our ceiling. Mother exchanged some choice words with her, or maybe exchanged was not really the right word, because Mrs. Gray Owl never said anything to anyone. She did stomp the floor hard enough to make our lamp start swaying. Gray Owl wasn't her real name. I never learned what it was, but she always wore gray and stared at everyone silently, just like an owl. Mother opened the bedroom door and carefully tiptoed back to bed. She was muttering loudly under her breath, something about everyone being idiots. I couldn't really blame her. The auxiliary police had raided us again. When my father was arrested 2 weeks before, they had confiscated nearly everything, even most of our clothes. Still, when thrown all over the floor of our new South London flat, the little we had left looked like a lot. We had spent almost the entire night cleaning up the mess. I tried to fall asleep, but now Mother was snoring so loudly that the lamp was swaying again. Luckily, I didn't have to keep listening to that for long. Ear-piercing sound of drilling filled the room. Mother sprang up and stood with arms straight down and hands clenched into fists. She closed her eyes and bent her head down, visualizing the flame of terror. It was a relaxation exercise she had learned as a child from karate or maybe from kung fu. I don't remember which, but that is unimportant, and it never worked for her anyway. If anything, it focused all her anger into a single spot that would be soon glowing so hot it shone right through her eyes, like the laser sight of Superwoman. I used to disappear whenever I saw her charging up her super weapon. The people drilling seemed to have sensed that they would soon be in trouble and stopped. Mother lifted up her head and opened her eyes. A speckle of smile was trying to find its way to her lips. It got hopelessly lost when she saw what the time was. Emily, get up now! I sprung up and started quickly changing my clothes. Mother was muttering even more loudly than before, using words I don't care to repeat here. Emily, move! I finished dressing up and dashed into the kitchen. My favorite breakfast at the time was cookie-shaped cereals. They cost little more than the regular kind, but Mother was still happy to buy them, even when she thought that they were a bit childish for me. Stop mucking about! Don't you have any sense of time? We can't be late. And don't make a mess. I didn't waste all that time cleaning for nothing. I scooped up the cereals as fast as I possibly could, wiped the table quickly, and ran to the bathroom. Mother kept rushing me on, but the truth be told, I was already running like I do during an air raid. Still, it wasn't fast enough for her, and she scowled at me when opening the door and rushing into the corridor. She shouldn't have done that. Scowl at me like that, I mean. Then she would have noticed the contractors right outside our flat. They were mounting a surveillance camera on the ceiling. Had it been just the one on top of the ladder, they would have all ended up on top of each other. On the floor, Mother, the ladder, the man, the camera, and the heavy yellow box filled with tools. Now she just bumped right into the second contractor, who was wearing a military uniform and squeezing an automatic rifle. Get out of my way, idiots! I apologized to the contractors as I darted after her. The elevator was broken, so we had to use the stairs. Mother stepped only to one stair out of every 4, but because I'm not a cannonball, I couldn't keep up with her suicidal plunge. 8 floors later, we were catapulted out into the courtyard. I flew over a broken beer bottle. It was one of the fancy imported brands, in case you were wondering. Mother ran fast, and I had almost lost sight of her by the time she reached the heavy iron gate of the estate. I would have probably missed the bus if Mother had not forgotten her Oyster card. That forced her to exchange a few words with the driver, who was nice enough to let us in regardless. The bus was surprisingly full. People usually avoided public transport for a while after a major terrorist attack, although this time it had been more like 5 small ones, not wholly unexpected after what had been done to us. Well, good morning there, Mrs. McCollum. You sure look like you had some fun last night. Mother looked at Mrs. Smith and pulled the hood up to cover her hair. I smiled and waved at Charlie. He is a year older than me. He got up to give Mother the seat. When we moved into the estates at the end of the summer, the Smiths were the only people we knew. Mother had bumped into Mrs. Smith a year before, and it had turned out that Mr. Smith and my father had been friends when they were young. From reception to A levels, they had gone to the same school, but had been separated when my father went to study law. Or that's what I believed then. Supposedly, Charlie's father had become an engineer and was working on the North Sea oil drilling platform, so Mrs. Smith mostly took care of Charlie and Ricky alone. Mrs. Smith sat silently until the bus was moving again. For the whole summer, we have been trying to get them to look at the roof, and when they finally arrive, what do they start doing? Installing surveillance cameras, of course. Unbelievable. Mother just grunted as a reply and massaged her head. I'm sorry, but life is just getting more and more ridiculous. Now I understand why you were always so edgy when working at Mad Rooster Marketing. I wish you had never recommended me for the position. They are insane. Mrs. Smith laughed. They would have hired you regardless. Getting the results is literally a matter of life and death to people like them, and that is more or less true for every one of us who didn't get to play the football mom. What are you talking about, Florence? Emily never played football. We did have to leave the concert piano behind. You don't suppose that in your dreams, no distractions, remember? And if you think this is hard, just wait until the winter comes. Then they will decrease the hours we are getting electricity. The ex-wife of my cousin knows someone who is a friend of a man who used to live in New Addington. She tells me that the new rationing quotas are already in use down there. There was very little traffic, and in no time at all, we arrived in front of the Merton Civic Center. Charlie told me that they were going to Morden Hall Garden for a picnic later in the afternoon. Mother promised that we could join them after picking up our rationing card. At the entrance of the Civic Center, the guard scanned Mother's residence card but did not let her in. I'm sorry, ma'am, but they're running late. Please come back in an hour. We sat down on the circular bench near the entrance. A member of auxiliary police, armed for a military-style assault, came to chase us away because we were not supposed to hang around so close to the security perimeter. But a single shot from Mother's laser sight made him change his mind. After 2 hours and 3 more tries, we finally got inside the center. A heavily armed police officer came to pick us up from the entrance and escorted us past the queue. When Father had been arrested, we had been assigned a special caseworker. We were led into a small waiting area just outside her office. The officer remained there while we waited. After a couple of moments, we were buzzed in. The lady inside asked the officer escorting us to wait outside. The caseworker was a woman with an old face and rectangular glasses. She liked the word lovely. Are you Mrs. Claire McCullum? Lovely? And how are you living at Legionella's court? Oh, it's Legion's court. Lovely. And your husband is still in prison? Lovely. Mother didn't much like all this loveliness, and the officer waiting outside had to be asked to step inside. The caseworker did give us our rationing card for the next month, but didn't let us leave. Before you go, could you just remind me what name are you using now? They forgot to add it to your records. No, they didn't. I'm using my own name. That did not make Mrs. Lovely happy. She scratched her head for a few moments and leaned over the intercom. Adam, could you ask Edward to come up here, please? She turned back towards Mother to look right through her. Do you mind if we speak with Emily alone, Lovely? Before Mother had time to say anything, a small man with the broadest smile I have ever seen came in from the back door. He was followed by a police officer who was like a mountain. This will only take a moment. Please follow me. I looked anxiously at Mother. A nervous smile was flickering on her lips. Emily, you'll have her right back in no time at all, Miss McCullum. Just some routine questions. Come along now, dear. I go up slowly and was rapidly ushered to the next room. Mr. Mountain remained standing outside the door. The smiling man wanted me to draw something, and I drew a man in uniform. Mother was keeping him away from us with a big samurai sword, the same kind she had on the picture we kept next to her trophies. Who is this man in uniform? I don't know, just a man in uniform. But people wearing a uniform are the good guys. Not this one. What did he do? I probably should have drawn something else, but I was a bit annoyed. The man grilled me until I started to cry. Through my tears, I kept repeating the same answers until they became automatic. My mind drifted away into Mordenhall Garden. Charlie was probably already there drinking strawberry juice. Mrs. Smith's juice was something to die for. Mrs. Smith's juice was something to die for. I could almost taste the strawberries and feel the warm water of the brook against my skin. Can you hear me, Emily? It is for our safety. What? I wasn't crying anymore. The smiling man had stopped smiling and was looking at me silently. That will be all for now. I'm going to take you back to your mother. My bright smile spooked Mother, but seeing her again took the tears back to my eyes, and my tears made her more relaxed. She hugged me. Mrs. Lovely cleared her throat. We are running late here, and I would really appreciate it if, Lovely. We were escorted away, having two police officers pushing us forward made it seem like we had done something horrible and were being thrown out. I could feel the eyes of everyone on us, even though it was not a good idea to show how much interest in people being apprehended by the auxiliary police. After they let us go at the exit, people became bolder and gawked at us openly. We began sauntering towards Mordenhall Garden. It was a hot day. Do you remember how we always used to go to the Richmond Park on a hot day like this? Mother said. There was something magical in eating ice cream while trying to get a glimpse of the deer. They are big and powerful animals. It's strange that they just let them run around freely like that. Half hour later, I walked through the Victorian gate into Mordenhall Garden with an ice cream in my hand. It had two big balls, strawberry and chocolate. The waffle was nice and crispy, not the cheap, soggy kind you find in most supermarkets. We walked past the old snuff mill towards the stream. As soon as I saw Charlie, I ran to him. Being among people was exactly what I needed after all the loveliness earlier. We took off our shoes and socks and waded in the stream. The warm water massaged our feet gently. It felt like the glorious shower after lying on guard for half the night in the icy mud. Ricky was trying to get us interested in throwing stones, but we were content just to stand, talk, and wrinkle our toes. If you want to, I can show you around when we get back home. Legion's Court is not a bad place to live. Why are you so nice to me? You do know who we are. Charlie said that it didn't matter, and besides, people in Legion's Court preferred to form their own opinions. It was not as if people in power seemed to care what happened there, so why should they care what the people in power thought? After a while, we got thirsty. Mrs. Smith had indeed brought some strawberry juice. With big red glasses in hand, we sat at the picnic blanket. It's funny how life can be miserable in one moment and perfectly fine in the next. Even Mother looked happier. You should come there tomorrow, Mrs. Smith said to Mother. Now that you and Emily have gotten yourself settled, you should start learning to know the local people. Charlie told me that on most Sundays after the church, they went to help Uncle Robert. He was giving people free food. He wasn't really Charlie's uncle, but he said that I could also call him that if I wanted to. Finding Robert's charity turned out to be difficult. Mother looked worried. She was trying not to notice the two men whistling and shouting at us from the other side of the street. A man came to speak with her. He had a runny nose that he kept wiping with the side of his arm. Are these people bothering you, ma'am? We're just fooling around, Robert. They were dying of laughter, or at least pretending to. Robert came closer. I could smell spray clean and garlic. Mother's palm felt sweaty, and she was squashing my hand until it hurt. You look like you are waiting for someone. I looked at Robert. You're smelly. Emily! We're not afraid to tell others what we think, are we? Your shoes are muddy. No, they're not. My shoes are fine. My shoes are fine, sure. They might have been a speckle of dust here and there, but who brushes shoes anyways? I wasn't a soldier yet, and still dressed like a princess, or would have, had mother not gotten the misguided idea that used clothes were just as good as new ones, but that was hardly my fault. Mother was trying to banish the smile that kept insisting it was needed. I was offended that she found my blight amusing. She should have been defending me. After all, it was her fault. Feisty girl you have there, ma'am. Wouldn't like to get on the wrong side of her. Can you forgive Uncle Robert? Now both Mother and Robert were looking at me like I was the Prime Minister. If only they would have known. But at that very moment, I could not think of anything clever to say. I forgive you. And cute, too. Must be getting that from her mother. At least now, Mother looked as uncomfortable as I felt. Let her stare at her feet and think of what to say for a change. At some point, she had stopped squashing my palm. I looked at her hands and was glad that they were not clenched in a fist. It meant that she was not using the flame of terror to calm herself. So, she raised her head. You are the famous Uncle Robert? At your service, ma'am. Who is it that I have the privilege of speaking with? You are not from around here, but still need to come here often. Mother was good at noticing things like that and not shy of airing out her suspicions. Is this an interview or an investigation? Robert's question gave me an idea for a brilliant answer. Mother's a lawyer. Am I in trouble then? I swear, little miss, I did not mean anything bad by it. Robert put a hand on top of his heart and bowed his head. I see you have met Robert. It was Charlie, Ricky, and Mrs. Smith. Charlie ran into a tiny alley and I followed. Mother shouted after me. A railway track was hiding behind the row of squalid buildings. On the path next to a tall palisade fence, a couple of dozen people were queuing with shopping bags. Charlie ran past the queue to a small door and knocked. An elderly woman with bright white hair let us in. Charlie, where is your mother? Who is your little friend here? The barren hallway smelled of bleach. Let me show you something really neat. We ran through a maze of dirty corridors to somewhere deep down inside the bowels of the building. I was out of breath by the time we arrived in front of a heavy iron door that looked like it belonged to a submarine. Behind it was an office with no windows. It had the musky smell of an underground bunker. A huge mahogany desk trying to dominate the room was losing badly to a black leather couch which was boldly staring it straight into the eyes. Into the eyes? Dogs playing cards witnessed the standoff from a large painting hanging behind the desk. Charlie closed the heavy door securely by turning the wheel on it multiple times. Then he opened the desk top drawer, took something out, disappeared into the corner behind the couch. Now watch. I could hear a whine of a small motor somewhere deep inside the wall, but otherwise nothing happened. Charlie took my hand and took me next to the painting. He lifted it slightly. There was a safe hidden inside the wall. Wow. Suddenly, the heavy wheel on the door started turning with a loud squeak. Together with Charlie, we dove behind the sofa. Charlie pulled the device out from the socket and over the and over the tortured squeal of the opening door, I could just hear the whine signifying that the safe was getting hidden once again. Not gonna lie, this is pretty difficult to follow here. And I'm also noticing that we're jumping around quite a bit. Is not really so far like one, like it's kind of like a stream of this reads so far like this is just kind of like a stream of like disconnected events. It's really difficult to tell like overall what is going on here. I'm not gonna lie. High-heeled shoes echoed in the bunker. Why are the lights on? Is there someone here? Hello. I recognized the voice. It was Rebecca. I had not realized that she would be volunteering at Robert's charity. Hurry up. People will start wondering where we are, whispered a man who had stayed outside the corridor. I hugged Charlie like it was the last thing I would ever do and held my breath. I could hear Rebecca frantically opening drawers. It's not here. The man rushed in and started rummaging through the desk. Expletives poisoned the air. Rebecca calmly walked back out to the corridor. Stop cussing and come out from there. Harry has just received some bad intel and considering the source. I'm not surprised. Robert is not as stupid as he pretends to be. They switched off the lights and closed the door. The room became like a sealed tomb. I could feel Charlie's chest going up and down rapidly. His warm breath tickled the back of my neck. His heartbeats filled my left ear and became my whole world. It took quite a while before either one of us had summoned enough courage to move again. Let's go, Charlie. Together, we felt our way to the door. We were too scared to turn on the lights. Slowly, we turned the wheel. It took a surprising amount of force to get it moving. And for a heartbeat, I thought we had been locked in. The door was incredibly noisy. And once we emerged into the dimly lit corridor, we stood for a moment listening. I held Charlie's hand as we sneaked through the gloomy basement like the special forces on a sabotage mission. The little green emergency lights had made everything look contaminated. Finding beastly things to kill would not have been surprising. Somehow, we had ended up 2 levels below ground, so our little search and destroy mission took a while. Like I often do during missions like that, I started to relax and was just about to let go of Charlie's hand when somebody turned on all the lights. The sudden brightness made me squint my eyes, and I lifted my right hand to cover my face. What are you doing down here in the dark, looking guilty as sin? It was Rebecca. I just wanted to show Emily something. I bet you did. But now follow me, both of you. Everybody is looking for you. When Rebecca escorted us back into the bleach-smelling hallway, she made it seem like we were 2 thieves caught red-handed. Me sulking with my head bent down did little to banish that notion. I told you that everything will be fine, said the white-haired woman who had let us in earlier. Mother didn't seem to hear. She got up and walked toward us. I glanced at Charlie. If I looked even half as guilty as he, we were in serious trouble. You can't just disappear like that. Everybody has been worried sick. What have you two been doing all this time? I looked at Rebecca and then at Charlie. Once again, I could not think of anything to say, clever or otherwise. There's one thing I know, Mrs. McCollum, Rebecca said. You should keep a better eye on your daughter. Rebecca da Silva, thank you for that amazing insight. Rebecca volunteering at Robert's charity almost stopped Mother from going there, but Robert managed to talk her into coming. The truth was that they needed each other. Robert was doing much more than just handing out free food, and the people he tried to help benefited from the unofficial advice of an experienced lawyer, even if that lawyer was banned from practicing. For Mother, volunteering helped demonstrate the good character she needed to get the ban lifted. Or this was the official explanation of their relationship. The real reason was far more interesting, although it does not explain why Robert decided to kill both my mother and me. What? What? All right. That last line there kind of threw me for a loop. Yeah, I don't really know what's happening, to be honest. A lot of things happen, but I don't really understand what's happening, if that makes any sense. There you have it. Perhaps things will get cleared up as the story progresses. I'll leave a link in the show notes and post-production if you guys want to check it out. Now we're going to move on to the final segment here. We're doing kind of a two birds with one stone on this next segment, where we're going to do kind of a featured media and also hot topic. Okay, so let's get right into this. Let's jump into it. This is going to be a long one, but a deep dive, and I'm looking forward to this. So let's get into a little hot topic for content creators. Yes, hot topic for content creators. This is where I pitch a hot topic to you guys, and then you guys turn around and create your own content on said topic. And if you tag me in your video, then I may feature your video during a future broadcast. Or else you're always welcome to just go ahead and chime in on the conversation by leaving a thoughtful comment down below. And for this show, what we're going to do is we're going to do a deep dive analysis. We kind of been making quite a bit of progress with this ongoing conversation. And we've been kind of coming at it from all different types of angles as we kind of embroider the topic, as I like to say. And this is the conversation, ongoing conversation of art and artificial intelligence. That's right. So I have a video to watch here. Someone weighing in on the conversation. And this is actually coming from, I was tagged by Ian Kirkpatrick at Ian's channel, Kirk Patty Cake. And this is, do two at the same time here. And this is Ian's video, AI and art, the four main angles as I see in conversation. So let's check this out. All right. Let's jump right into it. Ian did a lot of prep. Hope you appreciate the amount of prep that I did for this segment here. I have notes. I have notes on top of notes on top of notes. All right. So let's get into it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer. And today we're going to be talking about the great AI debate on Twitter, because last weekend, well, was not only a terrible ending to a terrible week, because I also got sick, but there's also all of this smorgasbord of BS going on with the AI stuff. So I wanted to clear a few things up, and I wanted to actually try to have a discussion about this, because as we all know, having any sort of legitimate discussion on Twitter is kind of a fool's errand, because very few people on there are actually trying to be genuine. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to weigh into the AI stuff going on with the people on there, because it came to my attention specifically 2 months ago. When I saw Shad Brooks talking about AI the first time. And I really didn't say much because, again, it's a fool's errand to try to have these discussions. But he's over here saying he's collecting information and thoughts and responses to the AI debate in good faith. And it did not appear to be that way, because everything seemed to be being dismissed, regardless of who it was from, if it was from other artists, and turned into something ridiculous. But more or less, I ignored it until it came onto my dashboard a day or two ago. And then I was like, well, this is ridiculous. So I want to talk about how this got started. And I want to talk about, I think there are at least 4 different conversations happening right now at the same time, which actually makes this like a very difficult discussion to have sincerely, because you've got comments coming at you from every which direction about very different things that are not the same subject, but they are on the same topic. And so you can't really have a constructive discussion talking about these different angles on the same subject, because you're talking about legality and business versus moral and philosophy, and it just doesn't make sense. So let me lay those things out. And
yeah, so just a quick point on that. So it is like the whole thing, unless you've been living under a rock, the whole conversation about art and these artificial intelligence generators is quite the hot topic as far as that goes. Now, when I say topic, that just means topic of discussion when it comes to just the topic of art and AI, like just those two in general. Now, that's the topic. But there's all these different subjects surrounding that topic that they don't like. That's where I think like because it's such an emotionally charged conversation. So I think for the most part, doing your homework is not doing your homework, not only to understand. So let me see here. So it's important to kind of like do your homework. It's not only a matter of just understanding, but becoming like kind of like a voice of reason, I suppose, whenever these types of conversations or arguments kind of arise. So that way you're coming at this and approaching it with some sense of discernment. So in other words, you understand where someone, because you're going to say, if someone's coming in good faith, if someone's a bad faith actor or whatever, you're going to want to have some level of discernment of understanding where somebody is coming from when they start talking about this art and AI thing. And that's kind of what I want to, my position here as I continue to watch Ian's video and provide a little bit of commentary.
And probably going to disagree, which is fine, because I'm not here to try to force anybody to do anything. But I consider this topic to be very important to me. I've always cared about art. My entire life has been the pursuit of art against everybody telling me that it's a waste of time and not believing in me and not believing I could do anything. Even my own art teachers. because they didn't like my politics. And that's another thing that comes up in this too, is people assuming my politics, my background, in order to mark me as somebody not to listen to. And it's the same thing that I'm sure the right wing has to put up with, gets tired of when they're labeled Nazis to be dismissed. Don't assume my political background in order to determine whether my thoughts have value or not, because that is the cheapest and smoothest brain way that you could go at any discussion like this, because you don't even want to address it. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I don't think any of you are terrible people. Some of you are definitely terrible people. But I think what I've seen here is a lot of people emotionally invested and a lot of people continuing their culture war bullshit on this to go after the people that they hate and steal from them and spit in their faces. So we'll get into all of this in a second. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do on my channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. Number one way is through Lemoy, where I give you guys a prompt. You create a short story or a segment, fragment, whatever for it, then submit it. And first Monday of the month, we go through those together. It is a great time. If you submit AI stuff, you're banned. Number two is if you're an indie author and you've got an indie book out there, submit your first chapter and your cover page below. They'll be read here on the channel, and hopefully it'll help more people find your story because it gets the word out. So there's that. And number three, if you would like to check out any of my stories, links are down in the description below. I probably shouldn't mention that because I feel like this is a time bomb of attack, but you know, whatever. So with that said, let's get to the thing that more started this, because I made a dumb meme out of frustration. Because let's say I've said a couple of other things on this situation to say, hey, slow down. How about we talk about these different things? There are more conversations going on. But every time you say something reasonable, it gets ignored. Still, I've said a couple of reasonable things in response to the people I've gotten responses from to zero feedback, including sampling in the music industry and how that's turned out. Because somebody said that sampling wasn't illegal. Technically, you have to get the copyright holder's permission to do a sample. That's been proven already. And stuff about the different arguments the different angles that I'm about to make here, and stuff about IP, because there are people in here that don't believe that intellectual property exists, period. So there's a lot going on, but nobody responds to the sensical stuff. They want to respond to the outlandish stuff so they can find any reason they can to dismiss you as insanity, as whatever it is that they want to label you as. So I did a meme that said, if you want to visualize your stories, hire artists, or learn, you're a millionaire. Now, I don't know a whole lot about Chad Brooks other than he has at least 2 YouTube channels, and I'm pretty sure that he hires employees for his YouTube channels. I don't know the extent to all of that. And then somebody in the comments said that he owns land. So he's doing very well off. If he's not a millionaire, I'm not opposed to saying I was wrong because I don't know stuff about you. So if you're not a millionaire, I'm sorry for getting that wrong. What I meant was you've got a lot of money. You hire people. You can obviously hire artists. So consider that corrected from a poor man looking at a rich man. So it just obviously gave Chad his in so he could just be dismissive again. When I've already said other things that were, hey, can we actually talk about this? Totally ignored those. But hey, here's a reason to dismiss me in a stupid meme. Pathetic lies. I'm a millionaire now. News to me. They attack me because they hate that you can make incredible art on your own now. Dude, you could always make incredible art on your own. It was never a barrier to entry. You pick up a pencil. That is also one of the problems with this shit is they're like, well, I couldn't draw, which means that art wasn't accessible. You have to work for it. And it's insane to me the number of people that think that having to work for something means that it's not accessible. It's building a skill. People don't automatically start out great at fighting. People don't automatically start out great at video games. People don't automatically start out as knowledge bearers for swords, but they grow by building that skill. It's not a barrier to entry to have to input time into something in order to get good at it. So that's not the problem. And I feel like it's very disrespectful for you to be like, oh, there's a barrier to entry. It's called time and practice. And now everybody can do it. So your skill is bullshit. Even when supporting/paying artists more than they ever will, you know, literally hiring artists to visualize my stories. Bro, you don't know if I'm hiring people. So you also need to calm down on making your assumptions. If you don't want people making assumptions about you, probably good to not try to straw man other people, but you don't know. But if you like AI, you're scum, regardless that they're supporting artists more that you are supporting artists more than them. Again, you're making assumptions about my support of artists, but isn't that an elitist statement right there? If you have no idea what my monetary status is, how much I'm making, how much I'm putting, how much I can afford to put into people when you have got lots of money. But to get off of the personal note that kind of launched into this is because of that tweet, I was able to receive a lot of different replies from a lot of different people and the different perspectives that I'm trying to get a sense of, again, how these arguments are happening. It's why I didn't wade into this before, because it's very impossible to have a discussion on Twitter, period, because nobody wants everything on Twitter is dunking points, which it's like, whatever. But I discovered
Yeah, just a quick note on that. Engaging in arguments on Twitter is basically just a fool's errand. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything about the Shad guy that you were talking about. I know that I've seen videos of his where he does like sword. He's talking about like medieval swords and stuff like that, but that's about as far as it goes. And I don't know what you guys' conversation or argument was about, the specifics of it. But I would just say that, like, in terms of like the argument for argument's sake, that's why I was talking about kind of prefacing this whole thing, this conversation with like doing your homework, understanding where you're coming from. And that's why I'm going to be kind of like addressing this, how you're talking about coming from the conversation from different angles, because there's a reason for that. And it's about kind of like refining your individual discernment, being able to discern people who are approaching the conversation with good faith, or those who are bad faith actors and they're just kind of being spiteful. Because I feel like when you're going to have the art and AI conversation and you're trying to speak on behalf, of art itself, like the benefits of art, however you want to make your point. The only people I feel like the only people that you're really going to be able to genuinely reach are going to be the people who are kind of like on the fringe. So like in other words, the people who are kind of like curious about AI and this and that, you're probably not going to be able to change the minds of people who are like full on, like already like entrenched in the whole artificial intelligence thing. Like they're all about it and they want to use it to make money and all this type of stuff. But I think you get into it here with your first angle.
Noticed kind of 4 main arguments that were being made at the same time, and it's impossible, if not unmanageable, to deal with this all at the same time, because you're dealing with people, like you're receiving all of this information. And
so the point that I was making is like, it's kind of like when you start an argument and you don't know where the other person is coming from, and because they might not know themselves, they might look at the art and AI conversation and think that it's just one thing. There's only one thing to talk about as it pertains to the art and AI. So they themselves might not even know. They themselves probably didn't even do their homework. But you, like, if you've been involved in the conversation for a while, you see all these different subjects popping up, and then it kind of like refines your understanding of the conversation itself. So that way, when you have that, you develop that understanding, it makes it so you don't get trapped in what I think you're trying to illustrate here with these people who have kind of like, you'll get trapped in this like argument of like circular logic, where it's like they're just, once you start to try to like talk about one subject, they're jumping onto a completely different subject on the same topic, but those subjects are kind of mutually exclusive. But doing so, not because they're trying to understand, but because they're trying to have a gotcha moment or something like that.
I give Shad the benefit too, that he's receiving feedback from all sorts of corners that are all sorts of different people with all sorts of different perspectives and experiences. And they're all saying different things in the same way that I'm receiving different people saying different things. So you can't really carry the opinion of one person over onto the other, but then you, as the person who's receiving all of the feedback, you're kind of going to automatically interject. They're all on the same side because they're all against this thing that you're for. And so then it kind of reads in your brain like it's the same person when it's not. And then you end up with contradictions. So I give Shad that benefit because that's also what I've gotten. But I've been trying to dissect what I'm seeing. And these are the 4 main arguments that I've seen and kind of my responses to them. Now, we're probably not going to agree on them, which is fine, obviously. But I still wanted to share what I've seen. And I would love to get your opinion on these 4 things. The first argument angle that I've seen is the financial or business argument. That is that the AI generation makes stuff cheaper to produce, makes it so you can produce it faster, and makes it so you can produce it with less skill involved. Content production is currently on demand. It's like the faster you can produce it and get it out there, the better. We see this with the rapid releasing of Marvel movies, the rapid releasing of pretty much anything on Netflix, the rapid releasing of novels. It's in every creative industry. It's just the constant flow of content. And the same is on YouTube, where some content creators do daily or bi-daily, or just try to keep that content flowing, because that's where you maximize the profit, by maximizing the output. The problem with this is when you give it into corporations, or the idea of just maximizing profit, is you're selling out moral and meaning for nonstop profit. There's nothing special in overconsumption. You also see this a lot in Booktube, where it's constantly consuming books, but not to the benefit of like absorbing the books. It's just for creating content. And that includes making hauls and unhauls for books that you haven't read yet, because you just got to make the content. There's been this issue too with Booktube that I've heard of people being burnt out by Booktube because they feel like they have to constantly be reading, and it's not fun anymore because they have to make the content, and they don't want to make the content. So it's this overconsumption and content creation, and just eat the next thing consumer eat. What's even more dubious about this is the argument being made is to steal art from smaller creators or historical creators, such as what Corridor did, stealing from an anime and not crediting the anime or the artist that they stole from. On the Corridor's image number 1.
All right, so just a quick one on that before moving on. So clearly very passionate about this. The one thing I'll say that I notice, well, I'll just put that in the wrap up. So just on the commodification, like keeping it to the business / like financial side of things, is like the commodification of content. Because I've already made the argument that what these AI generators produce is not art. It's just content. It's content being masked as art, or being presented as art. It's like an art imitator, if you will. So anyways, so what's happening is you have the commodification of this AI content, and it's coming at the cost of artistic merit in that sense, because the AI generators provide fuel like a commodity. Sure, they're providing fuel for the dumpster fire in that regard, as far as I'm concerned. But personal feelings aside, I think that the utility of AI may not be the actual get-rich-quick scheme that I think some individuals hope that it's going to be. Because I've already made the point before that, one, the big boys do it better. What I mean by that is that the corporations, if it turns out that you can actually monetize AI in some way, then the big boys are going to do it better, because they're going to have a whole army of interns playing around with the AI generators. But then I want to raise a second thing. Now, a completely different way of consuming media, and how the AI generators could be utilized in the future. It could be take out the middleman altogether. Death of the artist. I'm talking full on death of the artist here. And in the sense of just 100% customized, imagine for a second, 100% customized consumer content intensifies. Customized consumer content intensifies. What do I mean by that? I mean some sort of interface where the consumers come to a particular platform or something like that, and the platform is set up using AI generators, and it could be some medium. So say it's like shows or film, and then the consumer can go in there and kind of request, oh, I want a show that is, I want a romance, or I want an action show with a guy and he's doing a bank heist or whatever, and there's espionage and blah, blah, blah. Some sort of vague thing, but the AI will be good enough so it's just like instantly just kind of come up with, and boom, there you go. There's a movie that does not exist, starring actors that were never alive, and it just comes to life just like that. Customized consumer content intensifies. That's what I mean by that. No artists needed. Artists be damned. So there's that in terms of commodification and lack of artistic merit, because at that part, there's no artists at all. You're full on in a whole new dimension of simulacra. Hey, Cripson, how are you? Yeah. To serve you up. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. It could become a full-on customized experience for the consumer, direct to the consumer. But that's just talking business and finance side of it. How are you tonight, by the way? You doing all right? You having a good night? We're having a late one tonight. It's been a long show.
It doesn't mention where they stole the content from when they're talking about it here online. But then going down here into the comments, I did see this by Spiral Curse DeMarco, because, you know, you've got people saying who specifically did they steal from? Because that's obviously a question everybody asks as well. Who and how did people steal? I saw that when I was talking about Shad. And if you go into Shad's searches, he's got artists' names. Those are who he's stolen from. Specifically the work, in this case, of Yoshiaki Kawajiri and his animation team, who created Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, which mentioned specifically in this video as free online. It's not. This AI was trained on their work without payment or consent of the artists. That's who. So then obviously we've got, I've recognized this guy. He commented to me too. By that logic, fan art should be considered as stolen art. Again, people like to bring up fan art. No, it's not the same thing. Fan art is not monetized. What if someone pays for someone to draw it, like a commission? Then it is not distributed and monetized. All of your mental gymnastics don't make training an AI on an artist's work without their consent to produce paid work that copied that artist's not theft. It's theft, period. Correct. Training or hiring somebody to do a commission for your private work is not theft. Again, what I've said before is if this was all just stuff being kept personal, if you were just doing filters and just making images for yourself, this wouldn't be as big of an issue as it is. But people are monetizing the theft from other people's works. That is the bottom line. And what you're doing with this is you're making arguments as to why corporations are justified in stealing art from smaller creators, because they need to maximize their profit. This is the same reason why people had an issue with animators in America, especially working at Disney like 15, 20 years ago, having to train their replacements that were coming from overseas, because the people overseas could be paid peanuts. And so Disney and the other studios were not willing to pay the artists what they were worth when they could pay slave wages. The same thing was happening more recently, I think, with programmers who were being replaced with people overseas who could be paid peanuts and slave wages. We've also seen an increase of this in the lack of creativity in movie studios, as movie studios make less and less content that might be daring or creative or new in exchange for things that the accountants believe will be more box office success, because they're just looking at the money. There's nothing wrong with wanting to run a successful business, But if you're selling morale out for that bottom dollar, then that is where you've put your value. And personally, I don't have the level of value on the dollar over human morality and over art and over human value. I just can't do that. I'm not saying make a failing business, but I don't think continually growing profit over and over and over and over again is worth it. I don't think that it's worth it to cut wages, to find places in which you can enable slavery, to make things more difficult, to raise your profit margins. It's come up in discussion over the last couple of years with the incomes or the jobs lowering because of COVID, but profits raising for certain people because they were cutting jobs and then giving that money to the shareholders, because all that mattered was giving money to the shareholders. So you have to value something over money, I think, over the profitization for the corporation, or you're going to lose your soul. Now, maybe you don't think that, and maybe you're totally fine with cutting corners. Maybe you're totally fine with replacing ingredients for things that cost less but are maybe toxic, because you can increase your profits. Maybe you're okay with making things cheaper, like making products cheaper via what is the ingredients put into those, so that you can sell at the same cost but cost less to put the thing together because it's made cheaply. And that'll also increase your profit. Maybe you're okay with hiring people in other countries that will work for less because you want to increase your profits. And that is another way to do it. If that is what you value, then that is what you value. And I'm not going to be able to change your mind with a stupid video saying, I don't think that money is the top value that we should all go by.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying, commodifying at the cost of artistic merit. And then Crimson chimes in with integrity as well. So it's just making it cheap. We talk about it's cheap, fast, and easy, but at what cost, though? And that's the big thing. Because art, I didn't write this down in my notes. Well, I think I have it somewhere else. And so, but I'll just mention it here real quick. Is like there's more value to art. It's not like another commodity like corn or oil or something like that, where it's like there's some utilitarian value to it as far as that goes. But that is kind of like how I feel like some people are looking at the AI generators, is that it is a commodity in that sense, where they're just looking at it from a utilitarian standpoint, where Ian's saying it's just fuel to the fire in terms of churning out content. Oh, you need new content. But it's like, okay, but like, what does that even mean? Is there any meaning behind that? And we're going to get into that. I think Ian gets into it in another angle here.
That is maximum capitalism. That is maximum corporatism. And I don't think that's the road that any of us really want to go down if we've got a heart. Now, maybe you don't care and money is your top value, but there's that. There was a comment on Jazz's video that he did with Shad where it said, it was from somebody named Aragon07, and it said, if it's not about money, then why care though? And I'm being serious here from this perspective of a person who consumes art. More art is better. If money isn't the problem here, then why do you need to care so much if your art is being used to create more art? The whole reason the concept of stealing art literally even exists to begin with is because of money. If money didn't exist, the whole concept of copyright would be nonsense. If money didn't matter, then sharing intellectual property would be obviously the best thing for society. An infinitely replicable digital piece of art should be shared to anyone and everyone to use in ways that makes them happy. Why have ownership of something like that? So this tells me that this person has never created art, probably. I don't want to get too much into making assumptions. So I'm sorry if you do make art, Aragon, but that is such an ignorant take, because art is part of the artist's identity. You can't just take somebody's art and say, this is mine, without hurting the person that you're taking it from. I've known people that have created their character and have drawn their character and shared their character, and other people were like, ooh, I like the way that you did that. I want to make that my character. Oh, no. Look, art is so deeply personal to the person that creates it. And if you have never created art, and then you hear somebody say, "Ooh, I want that. That is mine now." If you have never created art, you will not understand the pain that you feel when somebody tries to take what is essentially a piece of you. It hurts. It is such a personal violation. And yes, I am gatekeeping my art, and I'm gatekeeping the art that other people have created unless they give you permission, because then there is consent there. But you do not get to just take a piece of the artist because you feel like it and then to go and claim it as your own anywhere else. That is a violation. And no, I'm going to disagree with you that sharing of intellectual property can only be a good thing. Tell that to everyone that believes Star Wars was recently ruined by handing it to the wrong people. You do need to gatekeep your story and your characters and your perspective to make sure that they are not misused, to make sure that they are not perverted. I would not want to hand Bodymore over to just anybody to then pervert the ideas of the characters of the universe I've created, of the themes that I've created. I wouldn't want to hand Ralph or Casey or Joey or Jag or any of them over to just random people to destroy and say, this is just as good as the original. Fan art, fan fiction is one thing. Do whatever you want in fanfic, because that is, by definition, that authors or writers or artists' interpretation of whatever they want. It's their fantasy of whatever they want, and it's not canonical.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was waiting for that point. So yeah, so in terms of like fan fiction, because I know that kind of comes up sometimes in the conversation of the art and the AI. Well, what about fan fiction though? But the thing about fan fiction is well, for one, is not monetized, because that the purpose of fan fiction, from what I understand, I'm not, somebody that's created fan fiction. Well, maybe when I was a kid, I'd draw pictures of like cartoon characters and stuff like that I liked. But that's just it. Like, that's what fan fiction is. Like, fan fiction is derivative content of the source material. Like Ian's stating there, it's not canonical. So in other words, if someone's writing fan fiction stories based on source material, that's not canonical. I mean, it's something in it and of itself, has nothing to do with the original source material, and they're not doing it for profit. Like, fan fiction actually serves a purpose that is like, it's more culture based, it's not monetized, and it's actually supportive of the actual source material in a way, because it's like it's kind of like bolstering a community around that source material. So it's not the same as doing fan fiction.
But to pretend that somebody else can take my work, my characters, my vision, and redo them, and it's just open season and it's just the same as it were mine, is disgusting. Those things all come from my perspective, from my experiences, from my emotions, and from the way that I have learned how to craft storytelling. And to say that there is no reason beyond making money to gatekeep your creations tells me that there's an ignorance here about art and art creation and the personal aspects that go into that creation. It's seen, this is a very business-minded way to look at art, as it's just a commodity and it's just something that you can put out in front of somebody, doesn't matter, push off. And there are definitely people that make products that look like art, like books, like images, that are just commodities. But I don't think that every image or every book is art. I think there's the product and there's art, and there's some that do both. But not every work of fiction, not every visual is art. And I'm sure that's going to be another area where other people disagree with me on. Another comment that I've seen on this subject of money is, if you enjoy doing art, then why worry about getting paid for it? That's the biggest thing with AI flooding the market, right? Actually, AI flooding the market means that it's burying actual artists. Note, one of the biggest sci-fi magazines that a lot of authors come up in, Clarkesworld, recently had to shut down because they were force-fed so many AI stories that they had to shut down. Authors already have a hard time being seen in the slush piles.
Yeah, the Clarkesworld thing, that was where it was for an sci-fi anthology project, and they were getting way too many submissions that were AI generated. It was some crazy explosion. Like they were used to getting, I don't know, less than 100 in a month or something like that, submissions that were that had not necessarily AI generated, but had plagiarism in them. And then once the AI thing started blowing up with like the Chat GPT or something like that, they reported in the article, I read the article in an earlier episode, that it was like something crazy, like over 500 submissions. They had to like deny like over 500 submissions, and they ended up blocking the people who submitted those pieces too, that appeared to be not only AI generated, but the stuff that the AI was coming up with was actually plagiarized as well. So like completely just lifted from some other source. So I don't know exactly how that works. But I actually do have something that I'm going to be sharing here as well. I'm going to be sharing a link. There's this website for those of you, if you ever do anything like that, where you need to like accept submissions or something. And I would suggest definitely using it if it's like something that that you're going to be monetizing. Is there's this website from way back, like when I started doing my blogging and stuff, but it's actually called Copyscape, copyscape.com. And it's like a tool where you can kind of check. It has like a plagiarism checker on there. But yeah, that's and what else I was going to say is what it's doing is it's ruining opportunities. So what they had to do is they had to go back to charging a fee. It was open submissions. And that's why they started getting a lot of this AI plagiarism type stuff. So they closed the open submissions, and they added they still are accepting from like newer authors and new writers and stuff like that, but now there's a fee involved. So as you can see, it's starting to like screw with people's opportunity to kind of get their work out there. So basically making it difficult. But it's also on the flip side is making it difficult for entrepreneurs to create these opportunities for artists, because Ian did mention something about how it only being about the bottom dollar. Well, I can agree to that in some extent, definitely if we're talking about corporations, because corporations in it and of themselves are not individuals. Corporations is just, and it's not even human. It's just a soulless entity that all it cares about is the bottom line. However, that is not to be conflated with the idea of individual entrepreneurs who want to create, who understand the value of investing in art. That investing in art is more, I would say, what did I write down? I said the corporation is not an individual, it's a soulless entity, but the individual entrepreneur and businessman is capable of understanding that people invest in art for values that transcend the bottom line on a financial statement. So in other words, there's more to art than just the financial value of it. And I think that that's understood on an individual level.
And this is just going to bury them. So that is a problem. It's people who are not doing the work, who want recognition and money. And if this was not about money, then why are people using AI? Because they don't want to create the art themselves. It's not artistic expression. The reason why this is so popular is because people don't want to put in the work in order to make money. Do you see how quickly people rushed to start putting things on Amazon, to start trying to sell and commodify what came out of the AI generations? If it was just for fun and for personal expression, I don't think there would really be this much of an issue. But people are racing for accolades, for publication, for
the accolades. I don't get that. Why? I would feel dirty Why in the hell would anyone want to be awarded for something that they put out there that isn't even created by their own hand or their own mind? That doesn't even make any damn sense.
Identity as an artist when they do not create. This is about money because the AI people are also flooding things for the money. But this is also a terrible take, which I hate, because if people actually care about people, then why do doctors or therapists or cops want to be paid at all? They should just be doing the jobs that they do for the credit of just helping people, right? Or are you just a doctor because you just care about money and you don't care about people? Like, why do people at nonprofits need to have a salary? Because they just care about people, right? So they should just be doing the nonprofit work and then also have a job on the side. It's not ridiculous for somebody to be like, I would like to be able to focus all of my time on creating art and not have to work 2 or 3 jobs for the rest of forever. But that doesn't mean that you have to pick one or the other, or that you are somehow wrong or the same as con men if you would like to be paid for your labor. And I hate this argument so much. The bottom line is, it's funny to me to argue.
I actually saw something. Actually, I think it was on Twitter or somewhere. I don't remember where I saw it, but really, it was like say back in like the medieval times or something like that. Like, say if someone like had a keep, like there was a lord or something like that, and they had a large estate, like they would have like people that lived on the estate, like with them. Like, say if it was like an artist or something like that, and they were commissioning an artist. So if somebody who was, they were well-to-do, they're well-to-do, they have a large estate, and they want to commission an artist for, say, whether it be a large painting, or they want the artist to actually do something in their home itself, chiseling a statue, whatever it may be, whatever the commission, that person would actually basically fund that artist's living. Like, they would provide that artist with an actual living while they are, commissioned for the work of art itself. So it's like, it's almost like this, this thing where it's like almost like they're not just paying for the piece of work itself, but almost like funding the artist's lifestyle at the same time, because of the amount of value how much they value that end product. They want to make sure they get that end product from the artist. So I just thought that was like interesting to think about. And that's the way, and I'm talking about I'm not talking about the average person that may just be commissioning an artist for an illustration or something like that. But I'm talking about, like, this is like the what is it? The bourgeoisie type of class, the bourgeoisie, the bougie class, the upper crust of society, the people that are supposed to be, they're well off, and they're supposed to be enjoying the finer things in life. But that's a cultural thing. You know what I mean? So now it's like, what do we have now? Venture capitalists, people who they have a shit ton of money, and what do they want to do? They want to make a shit ton more money. They just want to use their money to make more money, And then if they have charities or something like that, of course, I know that I'm like kind of straw manning right now, and I'm just broad stroking, but I'm just saying it. Like, clearly, it's clear that, there's a lot of money out there, but it doesn't seem like there's as much money going into the arts as, I don't know, for reasons that suggest that it's about funding the arts, if that makes sense. Almost like if money goes into the arts, usually it's just because it's some money laundering scheme, or there's some nefarious reason behind it, or there's some political reason behind it. Of course, I'm just spitballing right now, but
about the money, because
it's just saying how like business, this idea of like the business aspect of it just kind of it does kind of just pervert the meaning of things.
as if money wasn't involved in this equation, the art theft wouldn't be as rampant as it is, and it would not be flooding the marketplaces, and it would not be flooding the magazines. However, it's also ridiculous to make
Probably have
arguments
the whole
against
family
wanting
move right
to be
in.
paid for your work, because we do live in a society where you do need money to survive. So to make an argument that is for, well, in this universe, okay, that's great, but that's not the universe that we live in. So we're making arguments that affect us today. So the second angle that I've seen in the arguments is the moral argument, which is a legitimate argument. And the moralist and then also the humanist argue, the moral and the humanist arguments are the ones that I more typically talk about. And they don't line up with the business side, because business side never really cares about art. Business side cares about shareholders and bottom lines. That's just how it is. And if that's what you prioritize, you are never going to meet in the middle for the moral or the humanist perspectives. But these are the perspectives that matter to me as an artist. So one of the comments that I saw going around for this was, all of the emotional arguments against AI art are just selfish and elitist. It's people being upset that they don't have a monopoly on culture or art, or that some people enjoy AI art. The whole concept of stealing digital art makes absolutely zero sense when money isn't in the equation anymore. So I just covered this before, where it's, I need to gatekeep my stuff because it's my vision. It's part of my personality. It's part of my experiences, my life. Those people are me. They are part of me. They are part of who I am. And I've developed them in different ways. There are other reasons to be protective of your art. And the same can be said about visual arts. Is visual arts, every stroke, your character decisions, the way that you draw character noses. I've been so watching people's noses recently because I love the way Monty draws noses. And I've seen some other people that I really just love. Their noses are so cute. But the way that you design characters, the way that you then draw the characters, are heavily influenced by the artists that you've consumed, the artists that you admire, and then the way that you have practiced doing art. It is hours and hours and hours of muscle memory training and learning how to do something that you can't even completely replicate, because you're going to have your own experiences in your hands and in your muscles that create those different things on the page. You can never completely replicate somebody else's art. You're always going to have the influence of other things and of yourself. And that's part of building your own style, which I always look at as a blessing and a curse, because I look at other people's art and I'm like, bruh, I love that so much. I wish I could draw like that. And realistically, I know that even if I practiced and studied the way that they draw, I will never be able to draw like that other person, because that is their style. I can learn from the way that they do things, but I will always bring my own perspectives and the way that I've learned to draw. And let me tell you, those hundreds of thousands of whatever millions of hours that you put into something, you're never going to be able to just reach into your brain and then reduplicate exactly what you see, because you don't have that recall. You kind of learn how to layer things on top of each other in order to put shapes together and forms together and the way to color things, but you can never just like exactly as you see it. And that's also one of the really fun things about art, is it's always going to be different, and your style evolves over time. That's also part of it. So you could start out drawing like one person, and then like 2 years later, as you're practicing more, you're looking at other artists and you start integrating things from their style in. And so now you've got like all of these other things all amalgamating, plus your personal experiences into that creation. So this is just a way of saying there is more than money involved. It is part of somebody's personality. It is their experience. And more than that, when you're stealing somebody's art, like the guys at Corridor did, you're profiting off, or the people that were going after Sam. When Sam, I did a video on this forever ago. I think he's a fairly big YouTuber, and he does art specifically. He has got a very recognizable art style. And he came out speaking against AI a couple of months ago, and there was a Reddit page that opened up, and they were specifically taunting him with how they were stealing his art style and training the AI to rip off his art style because he came out against AI. They were specifically trying to punish him, maliciously training a robot to rip him off because he was against it. Now tell me, what is that? But when you do what these corridor guys are doing, you're profiting off the lifetime careers, labor, experiences, emotions of other people who created an identifiable work, an identity in visual arts or literary arts, if you're copying literary arts, so that you can train a machine to copy it. You are stealing somebody's identity, all of their labor and hard work and lifetime and training, so that you can take it. AI work can't be claimed as yours because you didn't make it. I'd like to say that it's fine in concept. And really a couple months ago, I didn't have an issue with playing around with it. I thought it was fun and a cool idea to just play with for concepts, in the same way that you might go to Pinterest to find concepts or ideas to be like, I'm thinking this, but you're not going to sell those things. You're not going to say that those things are your story or belong to you. You recognize that those are just references that you can't monetize because you didn't make them. But people are doing this now with the AI, pretending that they made things that they didn't. And there are so many conversations going on, including that intellectual property doesn't exist, that it just makes it so much more confusing what is going on, because even some people in this whole situation are saying AI isn't theft. And you have to figure out, is it from the perspective that they just don't believe that intellectual property exists, period?
All right, so let me just weigh in on that one, because now you're kind of it's kind of a blending of two things that's happening right here. It's more than just the moral. There's this, like, it's conflating the moral and the ethical, because where the legal side of it, I would say, is more of the ethics, has more to do with ethics, which is which is a more philosophical understanding. And then you have the moral aspect, which I would understand the moral aspect of the conversation being more of a metaphysical understanding. So just to kind of like address my point, because I really put some thought into this. So I said, all right, so art, so if we're talking about the moral angle now, okay, so art is a reflection of humanity. And sometimes I think this whole like AI debate almost feels like a litmus test in this regard. So what do I mean by that? I mean, it's almost like a way of gauging just how much someone thinks of other people, if at all. This is the angle I think most of the emotionally charged aspects of the conversation comes from, and it becomes difficult to take certain individuals seriously when it is clear that they don't care if they are coming across as being intentionally spiteful, hateful, or malicious against their fellow man. The startling lack of empathy certainly strikes me as ironic, since we're talking about art. The moral angle is kind of taking a cultural approach to the question, what is art? From my understanding, in order for someone to create something that is considered a work of art, the artist would have to possess or illustrate some degree of empathy, which is really just another way of understanding humanity. Art imitating life, if you will. So this is why I am not afraid of AI generators replacing artists, as much as I'm afraid that true artists will be more difficult to come by. I'm afraid people will become more defensive and less empathetic of one another, meaning more isolation and less collaboration, which I think that is the scenario where AI may actually pose a real threat to humanity. I don't mean Skynet driven murder bots per se, as much as I think AI generated manipulation, propaganda, etc., becomes more of an issue because isolated individuals are more psychologically vulnerable than those who have real human connections. Yeah, for sure.
But they don't, some of them don't say that. So then you're trying to go, okay, so where are you coming from that you don't believe this is theft? Is it because it's a collage? Is it because you don't believe in property? Is it because you don't believe in ownership? Like, where are we at? And then you have to try to figure out, there are so many voices. There are so many voices, which again, just complicates the issue here. In so many people coming together to opine on something, and then you're trying to make sense of where it's all coming from. But I have to disagree with you. I think intellectual property does exist. It is my labor that went into creation of these things. It is my experience, my emotions,
Which that
and
would
my
be the
personality.
ethics.
And you cannot take it. Now, I would be interested. That wasn't Shad. So I give it to Shad that I would like to know what his stances are on intellectual property, and would he be okay with the publication of The Conqueror's Shadow? But I have a
that would be the ethics. So if they don't believe in intellectual property, okay, that has to do, you have to understand, that has to do with the ethical side of it, because that has to do with legality, which is more philosophically based. But depending on their answer to that question, it might give you a glimpse into their sense of morality, if you will. In terms of how much they actually care about their fellow man in that regard.
Feeling that he does believe in intellectual property because there's a copyright page at the front of the book. But I don't want to be disingenuous in assuming that's Shad's perspective, since nobody can.
Yeah, it's funny. The people using like the AI generators and then bitching about somebody else stealing their AI generated image and using it. Just goes to show there's no honor amongst thieves. I mean, what do you expect at that point? It's just, it's humorous.
Be responsible for their followers or anybody that responds in their defense. We've all got different perspectives. So let's try to be as fair as possible if we want to get to maybe a solution or an honest discussion about this. One of the other comments that I saw around the morale is he's not hurting anyone by taking other people's art styles. But the fact is, you are hurting people, whether or not you admit to it. When you strip somebody's identity for your stuff to sell it, to commodify it, you are hurting. And this is also what bothers me, is there have been a number of artists that have come forward and said, this hurts me. There have been artists in training who are working in animation who say they see this stuff coming in and it's hurting them before they even get into the field. And then they're just told, oh, well, who cares? So you've got the people saying this doesn't hurt anyone. Somebody comes forward, says it's hurting me. And then the response is, oh, well, whatever. We don't care. Figure it out. So then don't make the argument that nobody is getting hurt, because very clearly people are getting hurt. It's the people who are not only being stolen from, but the people who are going to be locked out of the market, the corporations that you are helping to destroy art for your bottom dollar. Like, are you really a corporatist? Is that you? Are you the cyberpunk future that cares more about the bottom dollar than humanity? I mean, I can't do anything with that. So if that's you, like, good luck. We are never going to agree on that. But I still like to prefer that there are more important things in life than money. Which brings me to my next point, which is the humanist angle, which is also going to be very difficult to understand if you're a boardsman, if you're somebody that makes plain decisions on how to make more money. If you're an accountant of some kind, like if money is your thing, then you're not really necessarily going to understand this point very well, but maybe you will. I hope that you'll get the idea. But art is an expression of individualism. Like I said, you put who you are into what you're doing one way or another. There's no way around it. And sometimes it's very direct with the authors, of stuff, putting themselves into their book. Sometimes it's more direct with, visual artists making versions of themselves, making replacements for themselves or stand-ins, self-inserts visually, or cartoon versions of themselves in ways. Maybe it's an emotional expression for an experience that they had. But art is an expression of individualism. I'm not going to repeat what I just said before about how much of who you are goes into what you do. But that is why it is such an offense to steal something from an artist like that and claim it as your own. That is why gatekeeping of an artist's own art is important. Lyrics of a song are made from somebody's experiences. And we're not talking about like corporate written songs. We're talking about songs written by the artists. They are personal experiences. Look at Janie Lane's experiences with Cherry Pie versus the songs that he actually cared about.
So just a quick tidbit on the humanist angle. So basically the humanist angle, really, it's just kind of goes back to the morality of it. But the humanist angle, I think, has more to do with the how the art pertains to the individual, and it's like, what is art? Like really kind of honing in on that idea of what is art, because art is a very human thing. So art, the humanist angle really has to do with art as a form of expression or cathartic experience, a way of communicating, illustrating, or tapping into the human spirit.
Those are artists with personal individual expressions that are being trampled on. Every line, every stroke, every choice that we make, every word that is put into a book is a part of someone's personality, experience, character. We all read or draw or learn by copying at first. So that's kind of just how it is that's also how we learn how to speak a language, is we copy what we hear. And over time, we sort of start getting it into us how to do it. And then we start adding our own flair, whether it's an accent, whether it's slang, whether it's a mixture of things. And as we copy, we eventually come up with our own style. You can see the influences someone has usually, and their references, and there'll be references to them. But imitating is only one part of the learning process. You internalize it, and you get to the point where you develop your own style by learning the techniques that you need to build the things that you build. It's pain, it's struggle, it hurts so much, because so often what comes out is not what you want. And I am always so amazed when I look at processes for artists, when this was the sketch and this was the ending. And I'm like, how did you freaking start out with that and know that it was going to go to that? How do you look at the unfinished thing and not feel so depressed? Because I look at my stuff and I have to remind myself as I'm practicing art to be like, this is not the final thing. I'm going to be adding details. The adding of the details is where it really comes alive. Give myself time to work on this, let it build. And the same thing with my first drafts is I'm always overwhelmed when I'm working on a first draft of a novel, because I'm like, this is such shit. This is not what I imagined. And I have to slowly over time fix it. And even right now, as I'm working on Body More 3, I'm like, I still have to go through and fix things, because I just changed the location of something that happens in Body More 0 that is referenced in Body More 3. And so I have to rewrite some of the scenes in Body More 3 to do that. And I still have to do another full sweep edit to review the scenes that I changed from the last edit to make sure that those are fine. And it's just so much. And I'm not out of editing brain yet. So almost everything just feels terrible. And that's part of the process. Unfortunately, it sucks. It's painful. It takes forever. And eventually someday you look at what you've done and you're like, this is actually really good. I remember hating this when I was working on it, but wow, how did I do that? When you're dealing with AI.
See, and that just goes to the old adage, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And that's what, in regard to the creative process, matters. The creative process matters. So I mean, art is a human thing. It's cathartic. It's cathartic for both sides of the coin. And for the artist, not only is it, you know, just a form of like expression and stuff like that, but it's like, we're not machines. Like human beings are not machines. Like you can't just, time is a factor. Time is definitely a factor. And it's like, say if we were to, you know, take it something else and say, you know, time heals all or something, like say art is like a therapeutic experience for some people. Like say you do pottery or something like that, and you're working with clay with your hands. Well, it's not about, okay, you just have a clay pot. Like if you just snap your fingers and then you have a clay pot. It's like, no, that's not what it's about. It's the process. It's, you know, putting the clay down on the wheel or whatever, and you're working the clay with your hands, you're feeling the clay, and you're moving it with your hands. You know what I'm saying? It's the whole thing. It's not just about the end product. That's not what it's about. It's more than that. And anyone who actually is an artist and understands art will know where the hell I'm coming from as far as that goes, when I mean the creative process. If you just want to have the end product and it's just about skipping it, like if you're cool with just skipping the whole creative process so you can just hurry up and get to the end product, then you're probably not an artist, because that's where the meat and potatoes is. That's the whole fun of it, is starting from like just a little brainstorming phase where you start to get these little seeds that kind of sprout, and these ideas that start to sprout, and seeing that develop and watering those ideas as you take it all through the process from beginning to end, and seeing it all the way develop, all the way from beginning to end. And you know in your mind where it started from, and it was nothing, and then it became something, and then that something turned into something much greater, and then seeing it all the way to the end, that's the whole thing. And it's almost like once it's done, if you're a true artist, yeah, you could take a step back and you can admire your work, but there's actually a small part of you that's like almost a little bit sad that it's over. You know, like you're like, now what do? You know what I mean? Now that it's over, because it's like you have so much enjoyment like doing, like throughout the process of it.
AI as it currently is. You're dealing with a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And I have a hard time understanding how so many people can be on board with this when we're already complaining about the unending remakes and sequels and repeating the same thing ad nauseum. Like people are complaining, okay, here's Velma. It's just another iteration of Scooby-Doo. Can we get something new? Oh no, this is exactly what you would expect with AI stuff, where it is literally just redoing the same thing again and again and again. People's brains are being trained to just accept repetition of the same thing again and again and again, and to think that people and machines are basically thinking the same, and they don't, because humans can think and feel organically and machines can't. So humans can go off in this completely different direction, never thought about, but a machine is limited to what's already been stuck in it. So you're just going to get a repetition.
Yeah, so just a quick note on that. So I said remakes and reimaginings based on a specific individual's vision. That's not the same as generative AI kind of like falling into the void of this endless simulacra, the simulacra of the simulacra, like this inception, if you will, of simulacrum. It's like the creative process actually dovetails with the utilitarian angle of the conversation. The people who have convinced themselves that generative AI is just a tool, but what it's actually doing is it's subsidizing the creative process, which makes it a machine that is actually doing the work for them. So it's not really a tool as much as it's a machine, because it's taking away from the experience of the creative process itself.
Additionally, and this might be something that you only experience, again, if you've worked on something creative or if you've been creatively obsessed, but I know what it's like to need to get something out of my head. Because I've heard a couple of authors mention, hey, what if I created an AI that could just take what I said and then it was trained off of my writing to create something? I mean, yes, but then why would you want to skip the creative process? Do you just hate being creative? Personally, I know that the creative process kind of sucks sometimes, but I couldn't skip the creative process because that's what it is to be creative. That's what it is to get the story out of my head. If I told someone the thing and then the computer did it for me, it wouldn't expel the idea from my head. Is I have to write it out. I have to explore it, and I can feel it when the idea is out and it's done. I felt it when I finished a Dead End Drive that it was like time to move on. I felt it when I finished Boom and it was time to move on until it was like, oh, here's Boom 2. Now you've got that idea sitting in your head. I felt it when I finished Bodymore 1 and I knew that Joey's story wasn't over. And now I'm on 0. And then there's still more for Rolf with the Numina series. So like, I know what it feels like when I get to the end of a draft and I know that this book is done and my brain feels done. And that wouldn't come for me if I just said, here's my kind of idea, because I don't really know that much about it. Now, maybe that would work for you if you're the kind of person that does a very, very, very detailed draft where you figured everything out and you basically, you know, your outline is 160,000 words and your finished draft is like 200,000 words or something. So it's like pretty much already written out and you're just filling in some blanks. Or if you're a ghostwriter, a person that hires a ghostwriter, so you just give somebody an idea and they write it for you. But then again, you're skipping the creative process. So that's a different thing. But I can't imagine capturing the creativity, because I discover the story as I write it. I discover the directions it's going to go in as I write it. I discover the characters as I write them. And that's what I have to do revision for. So I don't understand this. What I've also kind of noticed from the AI defenders is this lack of emotional understanding toward creative work. I kind of outlined it mentioning before with how creativity and creative output are part of the person. And it's just, I feel like I've seen a lot of, it's just a picture, bro. It's just a story, bro. So why does it really matter if somebody else just takes it and does something with it? You see it as nothing other than a commodity to sell. For me, that is so despicable. That is such a gross way to look at somebody's art, at somebody's life, at somebody's imagination that they were able to take out of their head and put in some way for you to be able to see it too. The vision of how they see the world, of how they see a character, of their experiences and being repackaged into that thing. To just see it as, oh, it's just a whatever. Who the fuck cares? We can just take it and do other things with it. There is human value there. And it's so dubious to see it as nothing more than, well, can I sell it? No? Okay, then trash.
You see how you're
more
kind of
to
like
life than money. But that perspective
kind of like
also goes back to the
revisiting
person's arguing
some of your
for the
prior
business
points.
and financial side over the humanist side, which is the art side, and the moral side. The final angle that I've seen coming in is the legal angle. And that,
I know you're kind of just shooting from the hip in this video here, but you can see how you're kind of rehashing previously stated points. So the legal angle, I won't get into it. I know you kind of basically go over some of the same things that you said before in terms of copyright and stuff. So basically all I have to say in terms of this legal angle, which really just, it dovetails with the ethical, philosophical kind of thing, is it seems like a shit show. That's what I'll say right now. The whole legal angle on this just sounds like a shit show. That's all I really have to say as I sip my tea and say that's none of my business. You know what I mean? And also that I have very little sympathy for anyone who is willing to get wrapped up in this AI nonsense in a legal sense. You know, very little sympathy, I have to say, because you're doing it of your own free will. That's what I've said before. It's no one's putting a gun to your head and saying you have to use this AI stuff. No one's putting a gun to your head and saying use this AI stuff and then publish it on the open market for commercial gain. No one's telling you to do that stuff. This is all very murky. It's just nothing that I want to get involved in. So I'm going to skip to the next part here, to your final thoughts.
Causing the problem. Now, 4 other things that I've seen with AI, specifically in writing, that I would be concerned about or be thinking about. Number 1 is the flooding of the market, burying human-made things with machine-made things and making it harder to find. You've also got situations where people are hiring cover artists and then they're getting AI, and that becomes a liability issue in the future when more stuff comes to the court system. And if there are legal cases against AI that says you don't have ownership of that thing, and people don't know that they are getting AI. It's the same thing where it's like it's hard to find an actual editor in certain places because people will just say they're an editor, then use Grammarly and then send the thing back and they didn't really do an edit. So it's just making more scammy businesses, and it's also burying art, like I mentioned with the Clark's World. Number 2 is AI generators are trained by humans to allow certain ideas and words to pass through or not. This will sanitize the creative content, storytelling, everything. Look at what just happened with Roald Dahl. If you're using AI to create stories, to write your stories for you, only the ideas that are pre-approved, written on the back end, are going to be allowed through. And you could say, well, what if I program my own AI? Why would you spend your time programming an AI propaganda, instead of just writing the story?
AI
You're
agenda.
going to have more creative liberty by just writing your own story. That kind of just confuses me. A third thing is, when a system is in place to catch AI content, it will probably be rough at first to catch which is AI and which was the original, because these AIs are trained by scraping content that's out there. So I think that when there is a system out there to capture AI automatically, it's also going to end up flagging the real people that were also scammed from. And in the case that this is like stuff on the Kindle store, then I think it's going to result in actual books being taken down by real people, and that being a whole thing. Then the fourth thing is, and the AI bros are totally going to hate me for this, but it's a very humanist viewpoint. But I don't believe that machines can ever have the same creative capacity as humans. They can't feel organically. They can't think organically. And as a creative human, I know what the creative process looks like. I can't predict where things are going to go or how they'll develop or the depth of emotion or experiences. But storytelling specifically is a very human process. Art is a very human process. Talking about human experiences, emotions, irrationalities, fears, things built on your own experiences, knowledges, understandings, and nuance. We create metaphors and allegory. We create new directions to take things in by reinterpreting them. We invent. I don't believe that computers will ever have that ability, because they can only think within what is being created or what has already been written and thought of by their programmer. They can only remix what has already been fed to them. I also know that there is a segment of society that has probably spent a little too much time on the internet. And that has decided, the AI girlfriend is better than the AI waifu is better than any human. And there's no reason to interact with humans whatsoever. And
all right. On that note, I'm going to say, if you guys want to watch the rest of the video, I'll have it linked. I suggest if you want to respond to anything that Ian has said in the video, that you go over to Kirk Patty Cake channel and leave a comment on the video over there. If you want to respond to anything that I've said during this segment, then you can just go ahead, drop me a comment down below, and I will respond to your comment during a future show. Now, as far as Ian's video goes, let me just kind of wrap this up. So this is what I kind of saw, like your categories. I know you were going off the cuff, just speaking directly from the heart. Now, I want to say I did take the time. I watched your whole video. I took the notes and I put some thought behind it. And what I noticed is that a lot of your categories seemed to overlap a little bit. And I think that there is room, because you definitely come across as somebody who is clearly genuine as far as your intentions go. So you're making the video in good faith, and I know where your stance is on there. And I'm also kind of like the pro. It's just such a weird thing to say, pro art, or the anti AI. I'm not say. Yeah, I mean, I'll just leave it at that. But I'm saying, but if we're going to approach the conversation, I think that we should have our ducks in a row. You know, I mean, there's nothing that I need to convince you of. You are strong in your convictions. You know where your heart lies. I know where your heart lies. But conveying that to other people can probably be where the most difficulty lies, because that's where conflict can arise. So, what I mean by getting our ducks in a row. So, as far as these angles go, I think it helps to understand how to approach any given conversation on this topic that has so many different subjects. If we can quickly identify where someone is coming from. So, when somebody is just some rando, and they're talking about a subject that pertains to this topic, you want to be able to quickly identify, okay, this is the angle that they're coming from. Okay, so I kind of like took what you were talking about in this video and your angles, and I kind of put them together in, like, I think just three. I narrowed it down to like just three kind of not necessarily angles, but umbrellas, if you will, that different types of angles can come down to. So number one is the utilitarian. So here what I have. So so I have three umbrellas in which people can come at this subject from different angles. So number one is the utilitarian angle. So any kind of this is if they're taking any kind of angle that is pragmatic. So if they're arguing it's just a tool, or it's just to enhance my artwork or something like that, then you can understand, oh, okay, they're coming at it from a pragmatic standpoint. And then whatever their talking points are as far as that goes, then you'll be able to tell whether or not they've actually done their homework. So usually if somebody's coming at the whole AI, what I've noticed is if people are coming at the whole AI, the AI generators and art conversation, and they're just utilitarian about it. Oh, it's just a tool. It's just a tool. They haven't done their homework. They strike me, there's somebody who's new to the conversation, because it's kind of like that's kind of like the basic surface level stuff, is trying to figure out in other words, what they're basically showing you is that they're in the stage where they're still trying to figure out what this AI stuff is all about. That's the utilitarian. It's all about the pragmatic kind of like, how could they benefit from this thing? And then the second one is the ethical side. So the ethics have to do with philosophical arguments, which have to do with the business and the legality. You see how I put that on there? Instead of business being a separate thing, the business would actually fall under the umbrella of the ethics. So what are the ethics of this whole thing? And that it all boils down to, like you were saying before, the bottom line, which is another way of saying capitalizing. People, that's how I sum up the ethical umbrella, is like if somebody is coming at the conversation from the standpoint of capitalizing from this AI stuff. So you know that you're dealing with someone who is coming at it from an ethical point of view, or lack thereof, for instance. And then the third one is the more humanistic. It is the moral side of it, which has to do with the meaning. If it's more existential. In other words, it's like the questions of, like, what does it mean to be human? What is art? What does this product or this end thing mean to the person? So that would have to do with the moral side, and I think that's where a lot of, like I said before, the emotions come from. So if somebody is, so in other words, when you start talking about the existential side, like, well, what are artists going to do and this and that? and you get in your type of responses are like come from the type of responses that you're getting from people seem spiteful, hateful, full of vitriol, kind of just dismissive, then you know that you're dealing with someone that hasn't fully gotten to that point yet. Like they don't really know what art is, or they haven't really thought about the moral aspects on it, because perhaps they're more stuck on the ethical side of it. So in other words, instead of coming at the conversation, say if you really genuinely want to try to change someone's mind about AI generators, and you're talking about it from the moral standpoint of it, well, you're going to put artists out of a job, but the person you're talking to, they're not even looking at it like that, because they don't care. They haven't thought that far into it, because they're only looking at it from either the utilitarian side of it, where it's just about the pragmatic, like how can they benefit from this tool, you know what I'm saying? Or they're only looking at it from the ethical umbrella. That's as far as they've gotten, and they're just thinking about how they can capitalize. How do they serve to gain by using this thing? So I think that would be, moving forward, I'm going to kind of use something like that. I do appreciate you tagging me in that video and kind of bringing that to light, because I've yet to actually kind of summarize. We've talked about a lot of different subjects and came at this topic from a lot of different angles so far, and I've yet to be motivated to kind of just summarize. And I think that that's what your video has kind of inspired me to do. And I think that does kind of sum up the different angles, the different ways that people are viewing the perspectives. That's why I say these are like 3 perspectives, if you will, in which people come at this topic from different angles, like with whatever subject they're talking about. So it's like 3 different perspectives. You have the utilitarian perspective, the ethical perspective, and the moral perspective. So that's my take on it. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown on that in my commentary. And now I'm over the 3 hour, going on 3.5 hours here. I'm going to wrap things up. I got some comments to look at real quick before I wrap things up. Just to wind things down, let's go ahead and let's put some music on. Let's do how about we do, let's see. How about a little spiritual funk? We'll do a little spiritual funk. All right, check out these comments here. All right, so this is a little segment here, as needed segment, that I like to call Your Comments Matter. That's right. Because my comments section is not there to satisfy AI algorithms. My comment section is there to provide me with an opportunity to engage with those of you who choose to give my videos the time of day. That's right. So let's see what we have here. All right. So this is first one from Hobo Sermons. Hobo Sermons. It's from last week's stream. Says, really enjoy listening to your shows. Great interviews at the start too. Really appreciate that, man. Hobo Sermons, if you guys don't know who that is, I've been tuning in. He does early morning live streams. So morning live streams on Thursdays. He does original music on Thursdays, and then on Fridays he does cover songs, and he does acoustic. And he does singing as well. So it's pretty fun, and he has some really cool. I would suggest you tune in during his Thursday. If you can make any stream, definitely try tuning in during a Thursday one, or just going to his channel and checking out his library of some of his original songs, because he has some good ones. I sincerely enjoy them. Hobo Sermons again, and this time on a little hot topic: the representation in fiction this past week. He says, when there is a kung fu master in a wheelchair, and there will be, the entire world will know. Representation is a synonym for unearned validation. I have no comment on that one. Okay, maybe perhaps a riddle, a fortune cookie, if you will, a limerick. And then finally from Nicole's Bookish Nook. Nicole's Bookish Nook from last week's stream. I did a tag video, quite extensive tag video, the round 2 of the Rock On Metal Songs book tag, for this time the 2023 edition. She says, glad that you listen to rock and metal, or else my tags wouldn't get much traction. It was fun. Challenging. Definitely give you that much. Definitely a challenging tag. But I had fun. Made me think. And I appreciate you thinking of me and including me in that. I do. That is kind of you. I did think that was kind of you. So that's it for the live stream this week, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope y'all had some fun. I hope y'all discovered something new. But don't fret, because guess what? I will be back here for you next week, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. Pacific, baby. Yeah. Have a good week.